Welcome, my night wanderersa. Tonight, we descend beneath the bustling streets of New York City, into tunnels where the air grows thick. The echoes linger longer than they should, and the lights flicker with an unseen rhythm. The subway is more than a system of trains and tracksa. It is a labyrinth of secrets. Late at night, when the last train has left and silence falls, strange sounds echo through the tunnels. Whispers, footsteps, phantom train horns, and ghostly murmurs have been reported by passengers and workers alike. Some claim that spirits of long-past commuters, forgotten workers, or tragic victims still roam the tracks, replaying their last moments. So, hold on to your lanterns, step carefully over the tracks, and join me as we explore the 25 most haunted subways in New York with strange late-night sounds. City Hall Station in Manhattan has always carried an air of mystery, but the secrets whispered about its abandoned platforms go far deeper than old architecture and forgotten rails. Hidden beneath the bustling streets of New York City, the station sits frozen in Tamiya elegant, curved ceilings, antique chandeliers, and arched tilework that once symbolized the pride of early subway engineering. Though it closed to the public decades ago, its beauty remains intact, but so do the stories. And for those who have worked closest to it, City Hall Station is far from empty. Many of the city's transit employees talk about the station with a mix of respect and unease. They won't enter alone unless absolutely necessary, and some refuse to go anywhere near it after sundown. According to them, the silence isn't what's unsettling. It's the moments when the silence breaks. Late one night, a long-time maintenance worker named Ramirez was assigned to inspect the old ventilation system leading down toward the station. He approached the lock gate, key in hand, and was struck by the distinct sound of footsteps echoing along the tile corridor beneath him. Steady, slow, measured steps. He stopped, thinking another worker had gotten there first, but the radio was silent. When he peered to the bars of the gate, he saw no Oni, just a glow of his flashlight bouncing across the empty curve of the platform. The footsteps continued for another few seconds, then stopped just as suddenly as they began. He finished his shift without saying a word to anyone. But from that night on, he always requested day assignments. Other workers share similar stories. Some report hearing faint conversations drifting from the platform, usually sounding like several people speaking at once, but too muffled to understand. One supervisor described it as the hum of a busy train Aravinga. Voices, movement, the sound of passengers shuffling. Except the station has been sealed for decades, and no trains have stopped there since 1945. He swears the noise lasted almost a full minute before melting back into silence. When he walked down to investigate, the air was still, unmoving, and unnaturally cold. The chilling temperature is another common detail. Even in the heat of summer, when the tunnels feel like ovens and workers sweat the moment they step onto the tracks. Some blame old ventilation, while others believe something else is at work as something not entirely connected to the living world. One of the most unsettling encounters came from a track inspector named Doyle. He had been documenting structural shifts along the old abandoned loop late one evening. As he moved down the tunnel, he heard a sharp metallic clang echoing off the walls. The problem? There were no doors in that direction, just a dead-end maintenance alcove. He followed the sound anyway, thinking maybe someone had entered the tunnel without clearance. As he got closer, he noticed a faint glow at the edge of the alcovia soft, flickering, like the shimmer of old-fashioned lamps. When he stepped forward, the light vanished instantly. He swept his flashlight over the area, but the space was empty. He turned to leave, and Theta S when he heard a voice right behind him, a whisper just a few inches from his ear. A last stop, eh? Doyle refuses to describe the rest of what happened. He only says he ran until his lungs burned, and he never volunteered for another inspection. The most consistently reported apparition at City Hall is a figure seen standing near the edge of the curved platform. Workers describe the figure as tall, dressed in what appears to be early 1900s clothinga, a long dark coat, a brimmed hat, and polished shoes that reflect the dim emergency lights. The figure never moves, never acknowledges anyone. It simply stands there, hands clasped behind its back, as if waiting for a train that will never arrive. When workers approach with caution, the figure fades into the shadows before they get within 20 feet. One worker claimed he never believed the stories until he saw the figure himself. He had been escorting a new hire through the lower tunnels when he noticed a silhouette ahead of them. Assuming it was another worker, he greeted it, but the figure didn't respond. As they got closer, the outline seemed to dissolve like mist. His flashlight passed right through the empty air. The new hire quit the following morning. Even more strange are the reports involving the chandeliers. The station's iconic glass fixtures were never removed, their metal and crystal still hanging in perfect formation over the platform. Some workers described seeing them sway gently back and forth, as if waves of unseen movement were passing through the station. But there is no airflow in the sealed chamber, no trains creating vibration, no footsteps to disturb the stillness. One electrician swore he saw the chandeliers light up for just a momenta 3 softly cursa before going dark again. He checked the wiring, expecting malfunction, but the lines had been disconnected decades before. Among all the tales, one incident remains the most mysterious. A group of workers conducting an early morning tunnel safety check claimed to hear a full conversation coming from inside the station, clearer than usual. 2 voices, both male, engaged in what sounded like a calm discussion. One voice asked, "You coming?" The other responded, "Not yet." Then the station went silent. When they reached the platform, not a single human sound remained, just a lingering chill and a faint scent of old, dusty air. Some believe the spirits tied to City Hall Station are relics from the early days of the subway, passengers and workers who never left. Others think the station's architecture, with its circular design and closed-off structure, creates an echo chamber that traps energy in unusual ways. A few more imaginative employees insist that time itself behaves strangely there, allowing sounds and impressions from the past to bleed through into the present. Whatever the explanation, City Hall Station has become one of Manhattana's quietest but most powerful legends. The chandeliers still hang, the tiled arches still glimmer faintly under flashlight beams, and the air still carries that unmistakable, unshakable sense of being watched. For most people, City Hall Station is a forgotten piece of history. But for those who have walked its darkened platforms, it is something far more, Olivia, an echo of the past that refuses to fade. A reminder that some places are never truly abandoned. And when the footsteps begin or the whispers drift through the shadows, workers know one thing for certain. Chambers Street in Manhattan is one of those subway stations that feels different the moment you step into it. Even during a rush of daytime commuters, something about the air seems heavier, the echoes sharper, the quiet moments too quiet. But late at night, when the last scheduled trains have already come and gone, when the platforms sit nearly empty except for a few overnight employees, the station becomes something else entirely. Workers say Ida is a place where history lingers, shadows move on their own, and trains that should not exist make their presence known. One of the longest-serving night employees, a cleaner named Morris, says he first heard the Phantom train 10 years ago. It was close to 2:30 a.m., well past the final scheduled arrival. He was sweeping along the far platform when a familiar roar of a train approaching filled the tunnel. The air shifted, rushing forward as if pushed by an oncoming locomotive. Morris stepped back automatically, expecting headlights to cut through the tunnel darkness. But no train came. The sound grew louder, building to a full, thunderous Aravala metal scraping, brakes screeching, wind spiraling. Yet the tracks remained empty. The platform did not tremble. The tunnel stayed dark. Then, just as a train should have burst into view, the noise stopped abruptly, leaving only the soft hum of distant electrical lines. Morris finished his shift with shaky hands, unable to shake the sensation that something unseen had just pulled in and opened its invisible doors. His experience is far from unique. Several night supervisors have reported hearing trains that never arrive and never existed on the schedule. Sometimes the sounds last only a few seconds. Other times, they mimic a full air of doors sliding open, footsteps echoing inside the non-existent cars, the distant ding of conductor S bell. One employee swears he even heard muffled passenger chatter, as if a crowd was traveling somewhere beyond the reach of daylight. Chambers Street is also famous, at least among those who work thereaft, for its shadowy figures. They appear on security footage from time to time, though never clearly enough to identify. Tall shapes drift across the far ends of platforms. Shorter silhouettes linger near stairwells. The strangest footage shows a figure standing on the yellow linea, completely still for nearly 30 seconds, before walking toward a tunnel, and fading away before reaching its edge. Employees who have seen these figures with their own eyes describe them as darker than the shadows around them, as if absorbing the faint light rather than reflecting it. Most of them vanish the moment anyone moves closer. One late-night track worker, a man named Ellis, says he had the closest encounter. He was checking a section of the platform lighting when he noticed someone standing at the opposite end. The figure looked like a tall man wearing a long coat. Believing it was another worker, Ellis waved his flashlight. The figure didn't respond. As Ellis walked toward him, the figure turned and walked down the platform, pacing slowly but steadily. Ellis called out, "A station has closed. You can't be here. Eh?" The figure did not stop. Just as he reached the halfway point of the platform, the figure stepped into a patch of darkness created by a malfunctioning light. Ellis instinctively stepped forward to follow. And when his flashlight beam crossed the dark area, the figure was gone. There was nowhere to hide. No open doors, no staircases, no maintenance rooms. The platform was empty. Ellis later admitted he felt something else during the encounter, something he didn't want to tell his supervisors. He said the temperature dropped so quickly that his breath turned white, and he felt an overwhelming sense of being watched from behind. When he turned, nothing was there. Another worker, a quiet clerk named Rena, had a different type of experience. She was completing paperwork near the service booth window when she noticed movement on the empty platform. A dark figure walked calmly across the far end, moving from one column to the next. At first, she assumed it was a security guard. But when she stood up for a better look, the figure stopped abruptly. She stared at it, and for several seconds, it stared back or at least faced her direction. Then, as she reached for her radio, the figure stepped sideways behind a column, and never reappeared on the other side. No footsteps. No sounds. Nothing. What unsettled Rena the most wasn't the disappearance, but what happened after. When she spun around, she found only an empty room. Other reports described the same eerie sensation. The feeling of someone walking behind you, the faint sound of footsteps that stop when you stop, and brief impressions of movement in your peripheral vision. Several workers reluctantly admit they avoid certain parts of the station at night, especially the dimly lit side platform that hasn't been renovated in decades. Theta S, where most of the shadow figure sightings occur. Over the years, unofficial theories have circulated among employees. Some believe the figures are echoes of old passengers from the early 1900s, lingering in a space they once traveled every day. Others think the phantom trains are residual impressions of sound trapped in the architecture and replaying like an old recording. A few workers, especially the older ones with decades of tunnel experience, insist something else is happening. They say Chambers Street sits on a strange pocket of energy, a place where time folds in on itself. A place where trains that once existed might still be passing through, but on a track not meant for the living. Whatever the truth is, one thing remains constant. The experiences only happen late at night. Employees joke that the ghosts don't like crowds and prefer the quiet hours. But the humor wears thin when the station grows silent, when the lights buzz softly, when the tunnels breathe with the faint hum of the unseen. Coney Island is Stillwell Avenue Station, the bustling gateway to Brooklyn's iconic boardwalk and seaside amusement parks, transforms into an entirely different world once the crowds disappear. During the day, Ida is full of laughter, sunlight, and the constant rumble of arriving and departing trains. But late at night, when the neon lights outside dim, the ocean wind settles, and the platforms fall silent, the station takes on a far more unsettling identity. Workers claim that after midnight, the echoes you hear in the Stillwell corridors don't always belong to the living. The stories usually begin with the sound of children. Not crying, not Shatinga laughing. Soft, high-pitched giggles that float along the empty platforms as if carried by a breeze. Many night shift employees swear they have heard them. The giggles often come with the rapid patter of little footsteps, darting from one platform edge to another. But when workers look, they find only long stretches of concrete illuminated by flickering overhead lights. The first person to report the strange children was a station cleaner named Higgins. He was sweeping near the far end of Platform 6 when he heard light footsteps running behind him. They were quick and playful, like a child skipping along the tiles. Thinking a lost kid had wandered in from the street, Higgins turned around. The platform was empty. The sound stopped instantly, replaced by a cold, thin silence. As he climbed the steps to move to the next area, he heard giggles rise up from the platform below, three small voices, overlapping, echoing. Transit authority officers have had similar experiences. One late-night patrol officer, Carmichael, says he encountered the children more than once. His first encounter was subtly a giggle from beneath the station's elevated ceiling, faint but unmistakable. He shrugged it off at the time, assuming someone outside near the amusement park had laughed and the sound carried through an open entrance. But the second time left him shaken. Around 3 a.m., he was checking the western platforms when he heard footsteps running across the tiles behind him. Little footsteps. He turned quickly, shining his flashlight across the platform. No one. He called out, "Station eyes closed. Woe us there." His voice echoed back at him. Then he heard the footsteps again, this time running from the opposite side of the platform. He spun around it once again. Nothing. But the giggle that followed felt closure too close. He left the platform, radioed in the incident, and insisted someone else finish the sweep. The phantom children donatee just make noisier. They have been seen, too. One of the most talked-about sightings came from a conductor preparing his train before the first morning run. He had arrived early and was checking that the cars were empty. As he stepped onto the platform, he saw what looked like two children standing near the far corner, just silhouettes at first. Thinking they were siblings who had snuck in overnight, he called to them. They didn't answer. As he walked closer, the figures seemed to be in motion, shifting like shadows. Then, in the blink of an eye, the children turned and ran behind a support pillar. The conductor rushed over, but when he rounded the pillar, the space behind it was empty. The space behind it was empty. The tracks were silent, the platform deserted. The conductor refuses to talk about what he saw in detail, but he admits one thing. The children left no sound when they ran. Their footsteps were completely silent that time. Security cameras have captured strange anomalies as well. Most footage shows quick flickers of dark shapes passing just at the edge of the frame. But one clip has become famous among employees. It shows a small figure, no taller than 4 feet, standing near a bench. The figure seems to sway lightly, almost bouncing. Then, without moving its legs, it slides out of frame as if gliding. Technicians reviewed the footage for glitches, but everything appeared normal. The clip was quietly removed from rotation, but the workers who saw it never forgot it. Some longtime employees believe the ghostly children are tied to the area's tragic past. Decades ago, before Stillwell Avenue was transformed into the modern terminal it is today, the neighborhood saw multiple accidents involving young children near the old tracks. Some say the spirits remain bound to the station that became their final stop. Others believe the energy of Coney Island itself with its joy, fear, excitement, and heartbreak, it creates strange echoes at night. Echoes strong enough to take shape. One theory shared among older transit workers is that the children are reenactee spirits of the dead at all, but echoes of living memories, a residual energy left behind by generations of families visiting Coney Island. The amusement parks have been entertaining children for over a century. The idea is that some of their laughter, their excitement, and their fears somehow seeped into the structure of the station itself. Late at night, when the world is quiet and the veil is thin, those echoes replay. But not everyone believes the children are harmless. A few employees claim the giggles sometimes seem mocking. One worker, a platform attendant named Barlow, says he heard a child laughing directly behind him, inches from his shoulder. When he turned sharply, the laughter cut off and he felt a sudden burst of cold air, as if something had moved past him. He describes a moment as a playground laugh in a place where children should never be A. Another employee says she felt a small hand brush her leg as she walked down a platform late at night. She froze, thinking Shady stepped on some of Nia's belongings. But when she looked down, she saw nothing but tile flooring, and the shadow of her own body stretching under the fluorescent lights. Despite the stories, some workers have grown oddly fond of phantom children. They say the giggles remind them that Coney Island is a place of joy, even if that joy now echoes from somewhere beyond the living world. Others insist the children are trying to play, trying to connect, maybe even try to lead someone somewhere. Whatever the truth is, the nightly sounds continue. Footsteps dart where no one walks. Laughter rings out across empty platforms. Small shadows move just at the edge of vision. Atlantic Avenue at Barclays Center Station is one of Brooklyn's busiest transit hubs during the day, a nonstop river of footsteps, voices, and roaring trains. But after the crowds vanish, after the last late-night riders head home, and after the station workers lock certain entrances for the night, the entire place transforms. The corridors that are usually filled with life become long tunnels of echoing emptiness. The air grows cooler, the shadows stretch farther, and according to countless employees, the station begins to speak in its own unsettling way. It starts with the voices. Many night shift workers insist they have heard conversations drifting from empty hallways. Not whispers, not vague murmurs, actual voices, clear enough to make out tone but never actual words. A pair of male voices arguing somewhere down a closed-off passage. A woman humming softly near a locked maintenance door. A child calling to someone, the sound bouncing through the tiled tunnels. But when workers follow the sounds, the corridors curve into emptiness, and the air becomes thick and silent. One of the oldest employees, a veteran security guard named Thompson, first heard the corridor voices more than a decade ago. He was patrolling the transfer level between the subway lines when he heard two people talking nearby. Their voices sounded casual, even friendly. Thinking a pair of passengers had gotten stuck after hours, he quickened his pace. As he rounded a corner, the voices stopped instantly. The hallway in front of him was empty. He walked all the way to the far stairwell, checking every corner. Nothing, just the hum of lights overhead. As he turned to head back, the voices started guying behind him this time. He spun around, but once again the space was empty. He refuses to work alone on that level anymore. Another worker, a cleaner named Marquez, described a similar experience. She was sweeping near the entrance to an old, closed-off corridor when she heard someone say her name. Not shout it, not whisper it, just say it, like a co-worker calling for her attention. The voice was familiar. She swears it sounded like a colleague who wasn't even on shift that night. When she called back, no one answered. When she stepped toward the dark entrance, she felt an icy breeze drift past her, followed by the faint sound of distant laughter. But it's not just voices. Not by a long shot. Late at night, the station becomes home to another strange phenomenon. Phantom train doors. Workers hear them all the time, especially in the quietest hours. The unmistakable mechanical sound of subway doors sliding open and slamming shut. The echo is crisp, familiar, and impossible to mistake. The usual duration of sound then stops abruptly, as if the train has departed. The problem? These sounds often occur when no train is scheduled, when the tracks are empty, and when workers can physically see that no train is anywhere near the platform. One night, a platform attendant named O.A. Hara was completing her final checks before closing when she heard the distant rumble of a train pulling in. The sound of wheels clattering on tracks grew louder, then stopped with perfect timing at the platform edge. She heard the doors open 3 sharp beeps, then the mechanical slide. She stepped toward the yellow line, expecting headlights. But the track was pitch black. The platform lights flickered faintly, as if reacting to some unseen presence. Then, about 20 seconds later, she heard the doors close. Another mechanical slide. Another beeping chime. Then silence. A full arrival and departure of a train that simply didn't exist. O.A. Hara tried to laugh it off, telling herself it must have been sound traveling from another platform. But when she radioed the control booth, she was told no trains had passed through for over an hour. Stories like hers are common among the night crew. Another worker, an electrician named David, claims he experienced phantom doors from inside a maintenance tunnel. The doors sounded so close he thought a train had stopped directly beside him, though he knew such a thing was impossible. The noise was followed by the faint thump of footsteps exiting the imaginary train. Dev froze. The footsteps moved toward him, growing louder. When he shined his flashlight down the tunnel, the beam illuminated nothing but dust and metal piping. Yet the footsteps stopped just a few feet in front of him, then slowly retreated, one step at a time, as if whoever or whatever had approached him changed its mind. Perhaps the most unnerving report came from a conductor arriving early to prepare his train for service. He walked along the platform to his assigned car when he heard the doors of the train behind him open and close. Annoyed, he turned to see which train operator had arrived ahead of him, only to find the entire row of cars dark and completely unpowered. The doors could not have opened. They weren't at T connected to any external power source yet. He walked over to inspect them, and as he approached, he heard soft whispers from inside one of the cars. Then silence. When he opened the door manually, the car was empty, cold, and pitch dark. Workers who spend long nights at Atlantic Avenue of Barclays Center have their own theories. Some believe the voices belong to former transit workers who never truly left their posts. Others think they are residual sounds trapped in the tunnels, echoes replaying endlessly. A few blame the strange architecture via its multiple levels, odd acoustics, and abandoned hallways that twist like a maze. But some employees tell a different story. They say the station sits on old ground, layered with history long before trains ever arrived. That the tunnels cut through forgotten paths, sunken structures, and buried voices. That the phantom trains belong to a different Demia, an echo of another era, or perhaps a glimpse into one. Whatever the explanation, one thing is clear to those who work the night shift. Once the last real train leaves, the stationed OS and the T fall silent. Instead, it comes alive with things unseen. Voices drift through empty halls. Invisible trains arrive and depart. Doors slide open and close with no passengers to board them. And in the deepest parts of the night, when the station is still and the tunnels breathe with cold, stale air, employees know something else moves through Atlantic Avenue of Barclays in terror. Something that does not rely on schedules, tracks, or time itself. Times Square 42nd Street Station is one of the busiest transit hubs in the world of chaotic, loud, and flooded with people at nearly all hours. But when the crowds thin out, when the flashing billboards outside dim into the early morning hours, and when most travelers disappear into the night, the station reveals a very different side. Beneath the neon glow and the constant hum of the city, something older, quieter, and far more unsettling begins to move through its tunnels. Workers who take the late shifts know this side all too well. Thea V shared story for years of stories of shadowy figures lingering near unused escalators. Stories of strange shapes slipping through corridors that should be empty, and eerie sounds echoing through the deepest levels of the station long after the operational tracks have gone silent. One of the first areas employees warn newcomers about is the escalator bank leading to a now rarely used passageway. During the day, the escalators run normally, just part of the everyday rush. But late at night, the area takes on a hollow, abandoned feeling. Maintenance crews often spot movement near the bottom of the escalatorsa, quick shadows that flit across the tile floor. Sometimes the figures appear to lean over the railing, as though watching the workers from below. Other times they stand motionless, just silhouettes waiting at the edge of the darkness. A station cleaner named Russo had one of the most memorable encounters. He was buffing the floors near the base of a shut-down escalator around 3 a.m. when he noticed someone standing at the top. The figure was too still. Thinking it was a lost passenger or someone trying to sneak into a restricted area, he called out. He waved his flashlight. Still no movement. As he took a step forward, the figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows, melting into the darkness above. Russo climbed the escalator steps cautiously, light sweeping back and forth. When he reached the top, the hallway was empty, yet the air was freezing, as though someone had passed through moments before. He finished his shift without speaking of it until his supervisor casually asked, "Let me guess that you saw one on the escalator." But it isn't just shadows that haunt the station. Workers say the sounds are far worse. One of the eeriest phenomena involves phantom announcements. They echo through the station in areas where loudspeakers of Veneti functioned in Yersa. Old corridors sealed off, abandoned platforms that never reopened, stairwells closed to the public. The announcements sound real enough. The familiar chime, the static, the clipped voice instructing passengers to stand clear of the closing doors. Sometimes a destination is Mentionita, usually a place no longer served by the station. Workers have documented announcements referencing lines shut down decades ago. A night shift supervisor named Kim reported hearing a full, clear announcement while walking through a locked-off mezzanine area. She heard the chime first. Then a woman-esque voice calmly announced a train arriving on a track for A. But the track it mentioned hadn't existed since the 1960s. When she tried to record on her phone, the sound faded abruptly, as though someone had cut off a mic. But the phantom train sounds are what unsettle workers the most. Deep within the station, there are corridors that no trains have used in years. Still, employees walking through them late at night report the unmistakable roar of incoming trains, metal wheels clattering, air rushing forward, brakes screeching. The sound grows louder and louder, building to what should be a full arrival. Yet, when the workers look toward the empty tunnel, nothing appears. No headlights, no motion, just a blast of cold air and a lingering vibration underfoot. One track inspector, a seasoned veteran named Leary, described an incident that drove him to request permanent reassignment. He was checking structural supports in a closed-off tunnel around 2 a.m. when he heard a train approaching. The sound grew deafening, echoing through the narrow passage. He pressed himself against the wall, expecting a maintenance train to come barreling through despite no record of any scheduled movement. But as the sound reached its peak, a second noise joined Ida, the sound of opening doors. Hissing, sliding, then faint footsteps, as if dozens of passengers were stepping out onto a platform that wasn't there. Leary shined his flashlight directly into the dark. Nothing moved. No doors. No train. No passengers. Yet he could still hear their footsteps, soft, measured, echoing. When the lights flickered overhead, he dropped his tools and ran. Employees who worked near the older passageways say the shadows or donati behave like normal darkness. They move Strangelia too quick, too fluid. They slip across the tiles like they have purpose. Some workers swear they have seen these figures walking along abandoned platforms, pacing back and forth as though waiting for a train that will never come. When approached, the figures vanish without sound, almost as if the tile floor swallows them whole. A particularly chilling story involves a station agent named Liv. She was closing up her booth on one of the lower levels when she saw a lone figure standing at the far end of the platform. The figure appeared to be a man wearing a long coat. She called out, assuming he had missed the last train. The man turned slightly enough that she could see the outline of his fascia, but then stepped sideways behind a structural pillar. Liv waited for him to reappear on the other side. He didn't a T. After several seconds, she walked toward the pillar, flashlight ready. But when she reached it, the space behind it was empty. Nobody, no footprints, no sound, just cold air and the faint smell of metal. Workers have tried to rationalize the experiences. Faulty speakers, strange acoustics, vibrations from distant trains. But explanations fall apart when the shadows appear in places with no airflow, or when announcements ring out in sealed corridors, or when the sound of a train echoes through a space physically incapable of supporting one. Times Square of 42nd Street has always been a crossroads of people, energy, stories, and time. Some believe the station as ghosts belong to old travelers forever passing through. Others think they are re-echoes of moments replaying themselves. A few say the station exists on shifting layers of time, where forgotten spaces still carry the sounds of decades past. Whatever the reason, workers know one thing. After midnight, the station becomes something far different from what the public sees. Shadowy figures roam the escalators. Footsteps move through empty halls. Voices echo from nowhere. Phantom trains arrive on tracks that no longer exist. Bowery Station in Manhattan carries a quiet weight that few passengers ever notice. By day, Ida is an aging but functional stop on the subway line, its old brickwork and dim lighting giving it a slightly forgotten charm. But late at night, when the trains run less frequently and the platforms empty out, the station transforms into something far stranger, an echo chamber of sounds and shadows that seem to come from nowhere at all. For decades, employees have traded stories about the unexplained drafts that sweep through sealed corridors, the whispers that drift across platforms with no visible source, and the ghostly figures that flicker in the neglected maintenance areas. One of the most talked about phenomena is the cold draft. Bowery Station has corridors and rooms long disconnected from the main structure, but workers say the drafts feel intentional, almost guided. A platform cleaner named Ortiz described feeling a sudden gust of icy wind one night while sweeping an empty platform. The wind didn't blow past Hema, it circled him, spiraling around his legs before lifting the hem of his jacket. When he turned around, expecting a train arriving or a door opening, nothing was moving. The air was still, yet the cold sensation lingered on his neck as though something had been standing right behind him. Whispers are common, too soft enough to be mistaken for vents at first, but unmistakably human when listened to closely. Bowery-S night shift employees have heard conversations drifting through the empty station, often in tones too hushed to understand. A station attendant named Val heard what sounded like two people arguing near a locked storage room. She stepped closer, trying to make out the words, but the voices dissolved into a softest the moment she touched the door handle. When she unlocked the room, it was completely empty. The cold draft rolled out, striking her face like a warning. But the footsteps are the detail that unsettles even the most seasoned workers. Employees hear them often measured, deliberate, echoing across platforms long after the last passenger leaves. Sometimes they sound close enough to suggest someone is walking directly behind them. Other times they come from the far end of the station, as if someone is pacing back and forth. One track inspector named Malloy reported hearing heavy boots walking parallel to him on a neighboring track. He aimed his flashlight across the darkness but saw no movement. The sound continued for nearly a full minute before simply stopping, as though the unseen walker had stepped off the platform and into thin air. These stories are troubling enough, but the experiences in the old maintenance areas are what workers fear the most. Bowery Station holds several sections that Havina T been used in years of rooms filled with rusting tools, peeling paint, and debris left behind from earlier eras. They are dim, isolated, and barely visited except for occasional inspections. And they seemed to host the station I's most persistent ghosts. A longtime repair technician named Sloan had an encounter in one such maintenance corridor that he still refuses to discuss in detail. What he does share is that he was checking an electrical panel late at night when he felt someone brush past him. Not a breezy, as something with weight, presence, and intention. When he bent down to retrieve a fallen tool, he saw the reflection of a persona-'s legs in a broken mirror propped against the wall. The figure stood behind Hema, motionless, slightly blurrita but unmistakably there. When he spun around, the corridor remained empty. When he looked back at the mirror, the legs were gone. Another maintenance worker, a no-nonsense type named Green, reported seeing a figure standing in a doorway at the end of a dark hallway. He assumed it was a co-worker until he noticed how unnaturally still the silhouette was. It didn't breathe, didn't shift its weight, didn't blink. When Green waved his flashlight, the beam passed through the shape not around it, but through Ida, casting light on the wall behind the figure. The shadow simply dissolved, leaving only the faint sound of footsteps retreating down the hall. Then there are the reports of an elderly man who appears in the older parts of the station. Workers say he has seen only for a second or two, just long enough to notice the outdated clothing, the hat low over his eyes, the rigid posture of someone who lived in a different era. He never speaks. Instead, he gestures, usually pointing toward stairwells or corridors that no longer connect to anything. A janitor named Ellis saw him standing at a lock gate leading to a decommissioned tunnel. The man lifted his hand and pointed into the darkness. Against her better judgment, Ellis stepped closer. But as she approached, the man began to fade, like smoke dissolving in the air. The only thing left behind was the faint scent of old cigarette smokia, something strictly prohibited in the modern station. What makes Bowery Station particularly unnerving is the way its structure seems to carry sound. Whispers bounce strangely. Footsteps echo in places where no echo should exist. Some employees say the acoustics make it impossible to tell where anything is coming from, creating a disorienting effect that leaves workers feeling watched even when they are alone, like an imprint of energy waiting to replay itself. While checking the platform, he heard the unmistakable sound of a woman crying. He followed the sound down the platform, scanning every corner with his flashlight, but saw nothing. The air was freezing. His breath condensed as he stood there. Then, from the stairwell, he heard a whisper, a single, close, breathy. Whisper, a single, close, breathy. A donata. He backed away immediately, refusing to turn his back to the stairs until he reached his train. Bowery Station may be just another stop on paper, another aging piece of New York as infrastructure, but the people who work there know it holds far more than rails and tunnels. Ida is a place where time seems to fold, where sounds drift from nowhere and where figures from forgotten decades wander silently through the shadows. Late at night, when the platform's empty and the lights dim, a world of draft that circle like unseen hands, and ghostly figures that linger just beyond the reach of the flashlight beam. West 4th Street Station in Manhattan is a labyrinth, a maze of tunnels, platforms, stairwells, and forgotten corners that carry the weight of nearly a century of travelers. By day, it feels alive with movement, a crossroads for students, artists, commuters, and performers drifting between Greenwich Village and Midtown. But when the last waves of nighttime riders thin out, when conversations fade and platforms fall silent, the station becomes something entirely different. A different kind of presence begins to stir, one that countless late-night commuters insist is very real. The first thing people notice is the footsteps. They don't always sound close. Sometimes they echo faintly from the far end of the platform, tapping steadily like someone approaching from the darkness. Other times they seem to circle behind a lone commuter, pacing just out of sight. What makes them most unsettling is their consistency, rhythmic, deliberate, undeniably human. More than a dozen riders have reported hearing footsteps matching their own pace, as if someone invisible were walking alongside them. When they stop, the footsteps stop. When they move, the echo follows. A delivery driver named Lane had one of the more chilling encounters. After finishing a late drop-off, he waited alone for a downtown train. The station was silent. He paced to keep warm, and moments later, he heard another pair of steps behind him, matching his stride exactly. He spun around, expecting a homeless man or another commuter. The platform was empty. He walked again. The footsteps grew louder, closer, almost urgent. Lane pressed himself against the column, gripping it as if bracing for someone to appear. But nothing did. The sound simply stopped, leaving him alone in the humming fluorescent light. Voices are another constant presentia soft, ghostly murmurs drifting across the station at odd hours. They don't sound like conversations between living people. They come in brief bursts, usually only a few words at a time. A breathy wait, a faint hello, or a broken whisper that dissolves into static. Some employees say these voices travel along the tiled walls, riding on the cold air like they are being carried from another time. A college student named Alina experienced this firsthand. She was waiting for a late-night train after a study session, earbuds in but music paused as she scrolled through her phone. Theta S when she heard Ida a whisper, so close she actually felt breath on her ear. A single word, a please.a. She tore her earbuds out and spun around, but again, there was no one. The platform was empty. She backed toward one of the pillars, staring into the dark tunnel. The whisper came again, this time from behind her. Stay. She ran up the stairs without waiting for the train, convinced Summonia or something was trying to keep her there. But the shadows are what truly define West 4th Street Station's reputation. Many riders report seeing shapes dart along the tracks. Quick, dark movements that mimic a person walking. These figures appear in the space between columns, pacing along the opposite platform or gliding just beyond the glow of the station lights. What makes them terrifying is how silently they move. No footsteps accompany them, no voices, no wind. Just motion smooth and unnatural. What makes them terrifying is how silently they move. A transit worker named Porter had an encounter he still refuses to talk about casually. He was inspecting one of the lower-level tracks when he saw a tall shadow pacing back and forth across the rails. Thinking it was a trespasser, he stepped forward and yelled. The figure didn't react. Instead, it moved faster as if gliding crossing from one side of the platform to the other, without lifting its legs. Porter shined his flashlight directly at it. The beam passed through the shape, illuminating the wall behind it. The shadow paused for only a moment before sliding into the tunnel, dissolving into the deeper darkness like smoke. Some believe the station's strange activity is tied to its architecture. West 4th is built with multiple levels stacked on top of each other, with old service tunnels, maintenance rooms, and unused corridors branching off like veins. Sound travels in unpredictable ways. A scraped two tunnels over can echo beneath a commuter's feet. A whispered word from one platform can drift like a breath across another. The station seems to warp audio, twisting it through empty passageways. Yet even that OS and the T explain the voices responding to commuters, or the footsteps that match their pace, or the shapes moving independently across the tracks. One of the most unsettling experiences belongs to a musician named Diego, who was returning home after a gig. His train was delayed, so he wandered to the far end of the platform, pacing slowly as he hummed a tune under his breath. After a moment, he heard another voice humming with Hema, a low, distant tone rising and falling almost in sync with his own melody. At first, he thought it was another rider further down the platform. But when he stopped humming, the phantom voice continued. Slowly, its pitch shifted, rising into a soft, eerie wail that made the hairs on Diego's arms stand up. He backed toward the center of the platform as the wailing grew louder, drifting overhead like a slow-moving wind. When he glanced at the tracks, he saw a shadow moving along, thin, sliding alongside the rails. He didn't wait for the train. He ran upstairs and left the station entirely. Another story comes from a maintenance supervisor named Romano. He was working after hours, switching out old bulbs in a secluded, less-traveled corner of the station. As he worked, he heard footsteps walking behind Hema, but not on the platform. They came from the tunnel itself. He turned, flashlight in hand, and saw nothing. The sound continued, steady and slow, moving toward him. When the beam of his flashlight flickered a momentary blacuda, he felt something brush past his shoulder, cold and quick. The footsteps stopped instantly. When the light steadied again, he noticed fresh damp prints on the tracks. But no person had walked there. No person could have without being seen. Rumors say that parts of West 4th Street Station are built on older passageways or routes abandoned, sealed off, forgotten. Some believe echoes of the past linger, replaying themselves in dark corners. Others claim the station attracts lost spirits, travelers still waiting for trains that will never arrive. Whatever the cause, one truth remains. West 4th Street Station changes after midnight. The 125th Street Station in Harlem is known for its inertia, its noise, its rhythm, its pulse. By day, it feels like the heart of the neighborhood, a place where people from every direction converge. Students rushing to class, workers hurrying to their jobs, vendors hauling goods, performers weaving melodies through the clattering trains. But in the deep hours of the night, when the station empties out and Harlem's streets quiet down, a different rhythm takes over. Workers who stay past Closinga, or commuters who catch the last train say the station becomes alive again. Not with crowds, but with echoes. Echoes that shoot into TB there. The darkness seems to move, like a living entity. A lone match flame casts eerie shadows on the walls. The dimly lit tunnel reveals its true horror. The first thing that most night shift employees notice is the laughter. It comes faintly at first, like Ida-esque drifting down from the street above. But as the minutes pass, the sound grows clearer, like casual, almost joyful. Workers report hearing it while sweeping the platforms or locking up storage rooms. One cleaner named Jax described hearing a group laughing near the far end of the platform on a night when the entire station was empty. He turned, expecting teens lingering after hours. But instead, he found only the still air of an abandoned track, the lights humming quietly overhead. He listened again. The laughter continued, but now it sounded like it was coming from the tunnel. Too deep, too far, and too impossible. When he called out, the laughter stopped instantly. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. Footsteps often accompany these strange sounds. Soft, measured steps moving along the platform when no one is there. Sometimes they pace back and forth, as though someone is waiting for a train that never comes. Other times they echo above workers on the catwalks, even though the areas are locked and inaccessible. Late-night employees trade stories about these phantom footsteps, each one eerily similar despite being told by people who don't even know one another. A station manager named will experience them on a night he'll never forget. He was inspecting a stairwell between the upper and lower platforms when he heard someone climbing the steps behind him. Slow, steady, confident steps. He assumed it was another worker, so he stepped aside to let them pass. But no one ever reached the landing. The footsteps continued, coming closer and closer. When he finally turned around, the stairwell was empty from top to bottom. The sound stopped the moment he looked. The silence echoed in his chest like a warning. Yet the most haunting phenomena at 125th Street Arena the footsteps or the laughter. It's the conversations of faint, drifting, familiar in tone but impossible to understand. Workers say the voices sound like old Harlem, like decades of memories woven together. Brief phrases, bursts of excitement, jokes, greetings, all spoken in warm, lively tones. Some employees claim the voices sound like performers who once filled the neighborhood with jazz and blues. Harlem was once home to some of the greatest musicians the world has ever known, and many believe their spirits still linger where the music once thrived. A conductor named Hodge encountered something that convinced him these rumors might be true. After securing his train for the night, He walked along the platform to check the area before leaving. Theta S when he heard something unusual music, not from a speaker, not from another train. But as he followed the sound, he realized it wasn't a T coming from any room or hallway. It was echoing from somewhere deeper, somewhere unreachable. The melody floated up and down the tiles, carrying a rhythm that felt strangely familiar. When he reached the center of the platform, the music stopped. Completely. The silence afterward felt broken, unnatural, as if something had been interrupted. As he stood listening, unsure what he had just heard, he noticed a silhouette standing near the tunnel entrance. A slim figure, holding what looked like a saxophone. Before he could step closer or call out, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving only the faintest hint of a fading note. Maintenance crews working on the tracks late at night say they feel watched, but not in a threatening way, more like someone is lingering nearby, waiting to hear the next beat, the next rhythm, the next vibration of life in the tunnels. Many of them claim the stationized ghosts are musicians, the spirits of performers who once filled Harlem with music. Some believe the station serves as a meeting point for their energy, a place where echoes of old performances gather in the quiet hours. One worker, an older janitor named Clarice, says she once heard a full trio, a piano, a bass, and a trumpet carrying a soft, drifting melody. She stood in the empty station, mop in hand, listening to an invisible performance. She wasn't too frightened. Instead, she felt comforted as though someone was keeping her company. When the song ended, she whispered, "A thank you, a," and for a moment she thought she heard a voice whisper, "A.N.E. Timia" in return. Others have had less pleasant encounters. A rookie guard patrolling the lower platform heard a sharp knock behind him, then another, then a burst of laughter that seemed to circle him. When he turned on his radio to call for backup, all he heard was statica, then faint music playing through the interference. It lasted for about 10 seconds before cutting out completely. When the radio regained signal, the platform felt eerily quiet again. The stationized architecture amplifies these moments. Sounds bounce unpredictably, making it impossible to tell where anything originates. Theta asks why some believe the station is not haunted by spirits, but by memories and impressions left behind by countless conversations, performances, and human experiences over the decades. But for those who work the night shift, the explanation doesn't matter. What matters is what they hear of voices, laughter, footsteps, music. The station comes alive in ways that cannot be explained. Even commuters have reported chilling encounters. A local artist named Serena was sketching on a platform late one night, waiting for a delayed train, when she heard someone humming behind her. A soft, soothing tune. She smiled, assuming another passenger had walked up. But when she turned, the platform was empty. The humming continued for a moment longer, drifting past her like a breath, then faded into silence. Fulton Street Station in Manhattan sits at the crossroads of some of the oldest transit routes in New York. A storm of movement, tourists rushing with maps, office workers darting between platforms, commuters weaving to the tangle of connections. But when the crowds thin and the late-night quiet settles in, the station becomes something far different. The lights hum softly. The air grows colder, and the long, empty corridors begin to breathe with sounds that don't belong to the living. The most common reports involve doors opening and closing on their own. Maintenance workers, security guards, and late-night commuters all share similar story, Asa. Doors that swing open suddenly, even when there is no draft, and slam shut with purpose, as though someone invisible is passing through. One porter named Glenn experienced this on a shift he still refuses to forget. Thinking another worker was coming through, he waited, but no footsteps followed. When he approached the doorway, he felt a rush of cold air brush past him, followed by the door slamming shut, so hard it rattled the frame. Glenn stood frozen, gripping his cart handle as a chill moved through him. The hallway was empty. The air felt still again. But he swears something had walked right past him. These unexplained door movements arena confined to back areas. Even passengers have reported seeing emergency exits and service doors opening briefly, then closing with deliberate force. Some witnesses say they hear the distinct metallic click of a latch releasing moments before the door opens, as if someone on the other side were unlocking it. Yet when security checks the footage or inspects the doors, nothing shows. No movement, no malfunction, no one nearby. Footsteps echoing through empty corridors are equally common at Fulton Street. A transit worker named Shay was doing rounds one night. When she heard rapid footsteps behind her light, hurried, almost like a child running. She turned, flashlight ready. But the hallway remained empty. The footsteps circled her, moving from behind to her left, then disappearing somewhere down the corridor. For nearly a minute she stood still, listening to the sounds of someone running in a place where no living person was present. She eventually forced herself to move. But she says, the feeling of being watched never left her for the rest of the shift. Other workers describe heavier footsteps as slow, calculated, echoing from the old brick walls of corridors that rarely see use anymore. These steps sometimes come in clear patterns, pacing back and forth like a guard on patrol. One security officer reported hearing someone walking on the floor above Hima's steady boots on Tilia as he monitored a locked and used level. When he radioed to ask if anyone else was assigned to that area, the answer came back immediately. Ain't no Bodie ass up there to A. When he checked himself, he found dust covering the steps. Whatever had walked there had left no trace. But the most unnerving phenomenon at Fulton Street is trains that don't exist, trains that Avena T run for decades, and trains that seem to arrive from nowhere. Employees working the night shift say they hear the low rumble of a train approaching through tunnels that have been sealed off for years. The vibration trembles through the floor first, subtle but unmistakable. Then comes the scraping of wheels on tracks, the gust of air forced ahead by something massive, and sometimes even the high-pitched screech of brakes slowing. The sound always stops abruptly, fading into silence before anything appears. But workers swear they can feel the energy of a train and feel it rushing through the station, even though no scheduled train is anywhere nearby. A track inspector, named Rowan, experienced a phantom train one night while checking an abandoned corridor. The passage hadn't been used since the 1940s. But as he examined a section of old piping, he heard the deep rumble of something large moving through the tunnel behind him. His flashlight flickered as the rumble grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. The inspector pressed himself against the wall, convinced a repair vehicle was barreling through. But as the sound reached its peak, a sudden blast of cold air hit Hima. So cold it caused frost to form on the metal railing next to him. Then everything stopped. No engine, no movement, just the pitch-black tunnel, and his own shaky breath echoing back at him. Other workers report hearing the signature chime of a train, Aravinga, two tones ringing through the empty corridorsa, followed by the hiss of doors opening. Some even hear faint voices, like passengers stepping off and chatting quietly. Yet no living commuters stand on the platform. The tracks remain empty. The lights flicker in an almost rhythmic pattern, and the air takes on a strange metallic smell like electricity before a storm. Some believe Fulton Street Station's hauntings stem from its history. Parts of the station sit on top of older tunnels, rail lines abandoned as the city expanded. Workers during the early 1900s labored in brutal conditions. Some were injured, some never left. And between the fires, floods, and collapses that marked the construction of the city's underground network, many believe the walls have absorbed far more than echoes of the past. Others think the station's complex acoustics create illusionanza, sounds bouncing to the vast underground space. But even skeptics have trouble explaining the moving shadows seen darting across platforms, the cold spots that linger in doorways, the sudden rushes of wind that feel like someone brushing past. The cold spots that linger in doorways, the sudden rushes of wind that feel like someone brushing past. The sudden rushes of wind that feel like someone brushing past. A tourist once reported taking a wrong turn and ending up in a deserted corridor. She heard a train arriving to clear as day and footsteps moving past her, brushing close enough that she felt the air shift. And footsteps moving past her, brushing close enough that she felt the air shift. But when she reached the platform she thought she had heard, it was dark, roped off, and completely abandoned. Even long-time employees admit they avoid certain areas after dark. The station feels alive at night with presence, with motion, with whispers carried on underground drafts. Doors open and close as if greeting unseen travelers. And phantom trains glide through forgotten routes, forever arriving and departing on tracks that no longer exist. Fulton Street Station may be a transportation hub by day, but in the quiet hours of night, it becomes something closer to a crossroads between the past and the present, where old echoes continue their journey long after the last real train has left. Bedford Avenue Station in Brooklyn is a place that thrums with life during the day. Crowds of commuters flow in every direction, the air thick with conversation, the rumble of trains, and the distant wail of horns from above ground. But when midnight falls and the last waves of passengers have disappeared, the station transforms. The lights hum softly over empty platforms. The echoes of the day fade, and the station takes on a presence that is both invisible and unmistakable, that defy explanation. Ghostly figures gliding along the platforms, the sound of trains and doors that don't exist, and whispers that seem to come from nowhere at all. These apparitions are rarely solid, often blurred at the edges, but their movements are deliberate and unmistakably human. One of the most common occurrences at Bedford Avenue is the sighting of shadowy figures. A security guard named Daniels recounts one night when he was checking the southbound platform. The station was silent, except for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. As he approached, the figure turned as if acknowledging him, then disappeared into shadows, leaving only an eerie stillness in its wake. The sounds are just as unsettling. Workers report hearing trains arrive and depart, yet when they check, no train is in sight. Doors open and close with sharp metallic clangs, followed by the muffled shuffle of unseen passengers stepping off or onto the platform. The sound grew louder, and then came the pneumatic hiss of doors sliding open. Rivera jumped, expecting a train car to emerge from the tunnel. The platform remained empty, cold, and silent. The sounds faded slowly, leaving only the lingering vibration in the floor and a sense that something had passed directly through the station without a trace. Whispers are another frequent phenomenon. They are never loud, never threatening, but unmistakably human. Some workers say the voices resemble conversations carried over from decades past, faint echoes of lives that once passed through Bedford Avenue. A cleaner named Thompson describes hearing two voices murmuring just behind him as he swept the lower platform around 2 a.m. He turned quickly, expecting a late-night commuter, but the hallway was empty. He followed the voices down the corridor, but every time he drew near, the sound seemed to drift farther away, lingering just out of reach. Eventually, the whisper stopped entirely, leaving him with only the soft hum of the stationized ventilation and the rapid beating of his own heart. Many workers believe the station itself seems to trap these presences. Bedford Avenue is a complicated hub, with platforms stacked above each other, corridors branching into forgotten storage rooms, and stairwells that lead nowhere. Its narrow passageways and tiled walls amplify sound, creating echoes that carry in impossible ways. Yet, even accounting for acoustics, no explanation seems adequate for precise timing of footsteps, the exact cadence of doors opening, or the clear directionality of the whispers. The phenomena feel purposeful, as if the station itself is alive with memory, replaying fragments of life long past. Several employees have had particularly unnerving experiences in the maintenance areas. These spaces are largely inaccessible to the public, filled with rusting equipment, old signage, and the faint scent of dust and oil. One technician, Morris, recounts being deep in a back corridor when he saw a figure step out from a shadow near an old staircase. He raised his flashlight, illuminating a vague outline of a person. The figure didn't move toward him, but instead floated across the corridor and vanished into the wall. Moments later, he heard the distinct sound of footsteps running along the adjacent platform. When he investigated, the area was empty. The sounds had no source, yet they felt as tangible as if someone had been there. Visitors have occasionally reported similar experiences. A late-night musician once paused on a platform to play a soft tune on his guitar. As he strummed, he heard faint footsteps echoing in time with the rhythm, followed by whispers that seemed to harmonize with his melody. When he looked up, he saw a shadow move across the far side of the platform, pausing momentarily as if listening. He abandoned the station quickly, leaving his guitar behind. Some workers speculate that these manifestations are echoes of the station's past. Bedford Avenue has served the neighborhood for decades, and countless lives have intersected thereat, commuters rushing to work, musicians performing on the platforms, street performers filling the air with sound. It is possible that moments of emotion, movement, and sound have left some residual imprint on the station's atmosphere, replaying themselves in subtle, ghostly ways. Others believe that the station is haunted by more intentional presences of spirits unable to leave, forever wandering the platforms, trapped between the city above and the tracks below. Regardless of the explanation, anyone who has spent a night at Bedford Avenue knows that it is never truly empty. Ghostly figures pace the platforms, footsteps echo through abandoned corridors, and doors open and close as if greeting invisible passengers. Whispered voices drift through the tiles, telling fragments of stories that cannot be fully understood. Even when the trains are gone and the station is still, the space hums with unseen life, a quiet reminder of all who have passed through and perhaps linger still. Late at night, the station feels like a different world altogether. The fluorescent lights cast long, distorted shadows on the tile floors. The faint scent of dust mixes with the metal of the tracks. Every sound is magnified, every whisper amplified, every movement a possible sign of something just beyond perception. To the night shift employees, Bedford Avenue Station is not just a transit hub. It is a living echo of the city's history, a place where the ordinary and the supernatural intertwine, and where anyone walking the empty platforms may find themselves accompanied, if only by the footsteps, whispers, and figures that refuse to leave. Those who have experienced it describe a sense of reverence, even fear, mingled with awe. The station may appear empty, but it is filled with memories, presences, and echoes that stretch across decades. Bedford Avenue is a place where the past never fully fades, where phantom sounds ripple across the platform, and where shadows continue to walk long after the last train has departed. It is a station alive in ways most people will never see, yet impossible to ignore once experienced. Astor Place Station in Manhattan is one of the city's older subway stops, a place that hums with energy during the day, and the constant shuffling of commuters, and trains arriving and departing, and the constant shuffling of commuters. But late at night, when the station empties and the fluorescent lights hum softly above vacant platforms, employees say the station takes on a life of its own. Phantom footsteps echo down the hallways, shadowy figures appear and vanish into walls, and strange metallic scraping sounds seem to come from no discernible source. The first phenomenon most workers notice are the footsteps. They are often matching the pace of a person walking, yet they come from areas where no one is present. He was walking along the northern platform checking emergency exits when he suddenly heard someone walking behind him. The steps were slow, deliberate, approaching steadily. He spun around, flashlight sweeping the platform, but saw no one. The footsteps continued, pacing parallel to him, then up the stairs to an upper level. Callahan followed, heart pounding, only to find the staircase empty. When he returned to the platform, the sound of footsteps had stopped, but the impression of presence lingered in the still air. Metallic scraping sounds are another frequent occurrence at Astor Place. These noises are described as grating or dragging metal, echoing from corridors, stairwells, or even from the tracks themselves. Maintenance worker Rivera remembers one night when she was checking a mechanical room near the tracks. She heard a slow, deliberate scraping along the tunnel walls, like a rail cart being pushed, though no cart was present. She froze, listening. The sound moved toward her in uneven pulses, paused, and then retreated as suddenly as it appeared. She later returned with a colleague, but no signs of disturbance remained. No marks, no evidencia, just a memory of the sound and the chill it left in the air. Shadowy figures are perhaps the most unsettling presence at Astor Place. Employees have reported seeing silhouettes appear in dimly lit corridors or at the ends of platforms, standing still or moving slowly. One janitor, Malik, recalls seeing a tall figure near a closed maintenance door on the southern end of the station. The shadow seemed to lean slightly, as if studying him. Malik stepped forward cautiously, and the moment he did, the figure dissolved into the wall, leaving only the faintest distortion of air behind it. Moments later, he heard the scraping again, this time closer, accompanied by the echo of footsteps descending from above. Whispers are another common phenomenon, though they are faint and difficult to interpret. Some workers describe them as fragments of conversation, snippets of laughter, or the indistinct murmur of people speaking. A transit inspector named Holden reported hearing several voices while inspecting a stairwell leading to a disused platform. The voices sounded casual, even friendly, yet no one was there. He followed the sound of the platform, but the air was still and the tiles were covered in dust. It was as if the voices existed independently of any physical presence, echoing through the station as if bound to the structure itself. Employees also describe an unsettling awareness of being observed. Many report a sensation of presence when walking alone through corridors or stairwells, even in areas that are otherwise completely empty. Security cameras rarely show any movement, yet the feeling persists. Guards on a night shift often work in pairs or groups not just for safety, but because the station seems less intimidating with more than one person present. Alone, the footsteps, whispers, and scraping sounds become more pronounced, more convincing, as if the station itself is testing the limits of human perception. Several incidents stand out among the numerous accounts. One involves a maintenance technician named Torres, who was replacing lights on a platform late at night. As he worked, he heard a series of sharp metallic scrapes behind him. When he turned, a shadowy figure was moving along the platform, advancing toward him. Torres shined his flashlight, but the figure simply vanished, leaving only the sound of footsteps continuing along the platform before fading into the distance. Another report tells of a lone security guard who heard heavy footsteps pacing directly above the station ceiling. When he checked, the upper corridors were sealed and completely inaccessible. Yet the sound continued, moving from one area to another, stopping, then resuming, as if someone invisible was walking patrol routes that existed only in memory. The architecture of Astor Place seems to amplify these phenomena. Its curved passageways, narrow stairwells, and old tile walls carry sound in strange, unpredictable ways. Employees speculate that the station may retain echoes of the countless people who passed through it over the decades, building an invisible presence that only becomes noticeable when the station is quiet. Visitors passing through late at night have reported fleeting glimpses of movement on the platforms or in the shadows near stairwells. One musician waiting for the last train noticed a silhouette pacing along the empty platform opposite him. He thought it was a late-night commuter until the figure vanished into the wall as he approached. Another commuter heard the metallic scraping sound along the tracks while descending a stairwell. Thinking it was a cleaning cart, he waited for it to emerge, but nothing appeared. Only a faint echo that gradually faded. Some believe the station is haunted by the spirits of workers and travelers from decades past. Others suggest it is the accumulation of memory, a layering of sound and presence imprinted on the walls and floors by generations of commuters, performers, and maintenance crews. Regardless of the explanation, one thing is clear. Astor Place Station is not entirely empty, even when it appears so. The echoes of footsteps, the fleeting shadows, and the metallic scrapes serve as a reminder of the station's hidden life. Night shift workers walk its corridors with heightened awareness, constantly alert for the slightest movement or sound. Even when no one is present, The station hums with activity of presence that is intangible, persistent, and impossible to ignore. At Astor Place, silence is deceptive. The platforms, halls, and stairwells may seem abandoned, but the sounds of phantom footsteps, the flashes of shadowy figures, and the metallic scrapes testify that the station is alive in ways a human eye cannot always perceive. For those who pass through late at night, it is an experience that lingers, a subtle, eerie presence, a reminder that the station carries more than just trains and commuters. The echoes of the past, the whispers of the unseen, and the ghostly rhythm of a city that never truly sleeps. Canarsie Rockaway Parkway Station in Brooklyn is a busy hub by day, filled with the hustle and bustle of commuters, school children, and local residents. Trains come and go in a constant rhythm. Vendors sell snacks and newspapers, and the station hums with the energy of the neighborhood. But when night falls and the last trains leave the platforms, the station becomes a very different place. Empty corridors, abandoned platforms, and darkened tunnels give way to experiences that many employees describe as unexplainable. Phantom sounds, shadowy figures, and the eerie sensation of being watched have made the station notorious among late-night workers. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the sound of children laughing. The laughter is often accompanied by the patter of tiny feet, footsteps lightly running across platforms where no child has been seen. A station attendant named Simmons recalls one night when he was checking the southern platform after the last train had left. As he walked along the empty station, he heard the distinct sound of children playing near a set of old benches. He turned quickly, expecting to see a group of kids who had wandered in from the neighborhood, but the platform was completely empty. The sound continued, distant but clear, as if multiple children were running and laughing somewhere deep in the tunnel. When he finally left, the laughter faded, leaving only the hum of the fluorescent lights and the echo of his own footsteps. Phantom train sounds are another frequent occurrence. Employees report hearing the roar of engines approaching, the clanging of wheels on tracks, and the sharp blast of train horns. One late-night technician, Morales, described a particularly unnerving experience. While inspecting a section of disused tunnel, he heard a deep rumble approaching from the darkness. The sound grew louder, the air vibrated, and then a train horn blared sharply, echoing through the walls. Morales braced himself, expecting to see a train emerge from the tunnel, but nothing appeared. The sound faded gradually, leaving only the residual vibration in the platform beneath his feet. Similar experiences are reported throughout the station, particularly in the older sections, where tunnels branch into areas that are no longer used. Shadowy figures are the most unsettling sightings at Canarsie Rockaway Parkway. Late-night employees often report seeing vague shapes moving along platforms, between pillars, or down darkened corridors. These figures rarely remain in one place, appearing and disappearing without warning, sometimes as fleeting glimpses at the edge of vision, sometimes fully visible for several seconds. One cleaning crew member, Patel, remembers walking along the northbound platform when he noticed a dark figure standing near a stairwell. Moments later, he heard faint giggles behind Hema, the same sound of children playing though the platform remained entirely empty. The combination of sounds and visual phenomena makes the station feel alive at night in a way that is both disorienting and eerie. Footsteps echo across platforms, yet the corridors remain deserted. Doors creak open and shut in abandoned maintenance rooms. Metallic scraping, reminiscent of carts or trolleys, is sometimes heard moving along the tracks or inside tunnels where no equipment is present. Late-night employees describe these occurrences as if the station is playing tricks on perception, blending auditory and visual experiences into something almost tangible yet completely unexplainable. Some employees believe these experiences are linked to the station's long history. Canarsie Rockaway Parkway has been a part of Brooklyn for decades, serving generations of families, workers, and students. Many speculate that the laughter of children could be echoes of past generations, imprinted onto the station's walls and tunnels. Others think the shadowy figures represent commuters or workers who remain attached to the station in some form, moving through areas that are no longer accessible to the living. Whatever the explanation, those who witness these phenomena say the station takes on a life of its own after dark, carrying the traces of lives long gone. A security guard named Henderson shared an experience that has stayed with him. He was performing a routine check of the southern tunnels when he heard the distant blast of a train horn, followed immediately by the sound of children running and laughing. As he rounded a corner, he saw several shadowy forms moving along the tunnel wall. They were humanoid in shape, small and indistinct, yet their movements were purposeful. When he approached, the figures vanished into the shadows, leaving only the echo of their laughter bouncing through the tunnel. Henderson says that night, the station felt less like a structure of concrete and steel. Late-night cleaning crews also report encounters that are more sensory than visual. The station is said to be colder in certain areas for no reason, the air carrying a faint, indistinct scent of something warm and human, like baked goods or the faint smell of a schoolroom. Some describe the sensation of being gently brushed by something unseen, as if invisible children are running past them or small figures are moving along the platform. The combination of auditory, visual, and tactile phenomena contributes to the sense that the station is alive, with presences that do not belong to the waking world. Some commuters who have stayed past midnight have noticed the same phenomena. A musician waiting for a delayed train reported hearing children laughing, and a distinct sound of a train rolling down an empty track. While the platform remained deserted, a fleeting shadow passed across the far side of the platform, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. Others have reported footsteps behind them pacing exactly with their own, with no one in sight when they turned. The stationized architecture contributes to its eerie reputation. Employees describe walking down these corridors and feeling as if they are not alone, that the station itself is observing, guiding, or replaying echoes of the past. For those who work late at Canarsie Rockaway Parkway, the station is far more than a transit hub after dark. It becomes a place of memory, of lingering presences, and of unexplained phenomena. Phantom train horns, the laughter of children, shadowy figures, and footsteps that echo across empty platforms remind employees that the station is alive in ways unseen by most visitors. It is a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist, where the past whispers in the tunnels, and where late-night workers walk alongside echoes of those who came before. For those who work late at Canarsie Rockaway Parkway, the station is far more than a transit hub after dark. Even when the platforms are empty and the tracks are silent, Canarsie Rockaway Parkway Station is never truly deserted. The sounds of children laughing, the distant roar of phantom trains, and the shadowy figures that move through the tunnels are constant reminders that the station holds more than just trains. It holds echoes of lives, memories, and presences that linger long after the last commuter has left. A hidden world beneath the streets of Brooklyn awakens when darkness falls. Flushing Main Street Station in Queens is a bustling hub during the day, filled with the constant energy of commuters, families, and students moving to and from the heart of the city. The platforms reverberate with the sound of trains arriving and departing, announcements echoing across the concourse, and the hum of conversations blending with the metallic rhythm of the tracks. Yet when the late-night hours settle over the station and the crowds vanish, the familiar buzz gives way to something entirely different. The station transforms into a place of echoes, shadows, and inexplicable sounds that defy explanation. Ghostly voices, footsteps from empty corridors, and apparitions that seem to walk along platforms only to vanish into walls. It is the sound of footsteps where no one is present, echoing across platforms long after the last trains have departed. A night shift custodian named Elena recounted one particular night when she was sweeping the northern platform that defy explanation. Ghostly voices, footsteps from empty corridors, and apparitions that seem to walk along platforms only to vanish into walls. As she moved down the deserted corridor, she heard a second set of footsteps behind her, slow and deliberate. She turned, expecting to see a late-night commuter or fellow employee. The platform was empty. The footsteps continued, moving in rhythm with hers, and then abruptly stopped. The silence afterward was deafening, leaving Elena shaken and unsure whether to continue her work or leave immediately. Ghostly voices are another frequent phenomenon. Employees report hearing whispers, muffled conversations, and faint laughter drifting through hallways and across platforms. Often, these sounds seem to originate from stairwells, closed-off maintenance rooms, or tunnels that have not been used in decades. A transit inspector named Marco described hearing a snippet of conversation while checking the upper-level corridor. He could make out two distinct voices, speaking in casual tones, though the words themselves were unintelligible. When he moved closer to investigate, the voices seemed to shift farther away, traveling down the corridor as if deliberately avoiding him. By the time he reached the source, there was only silence. Apparitions are the most unsettling encounters reported at Flushing Main Street. Many late-night employees claim to see faint figures walking along the platforms, sometimes moving with the fluidity of ordinary human motion, other times gliding unnaturally through shadows. One night, a maintenance worker named Thomas was replacing a light fixture near the eastern platform. As he adjusted the bulb, he noticed a tall silhouette walking past the platform edge. Thinking it was a commuter who had somehow remained behind, he raised his flashlight. The figure paused and then slowly faded into the wall, as if it had never existed. Moments later, Thomas heard the faint echo of footsteps receding down the adjacent tunnel, though when he investigated, there was no one there. The combination of sounds and visual phenomena gives the station a unique, haunting character after dark. Doors creak and slam. Distant trains can be heard where no tracks are in service, and the faint murmur of voices drifts unpredictably through empty corridors. One security guard, Ramirez, described hearing the metallic squeak of train wheels along tracks that had long been decommissioned. Expecting to see an engineer or a maintenance cart, he looked down the platform, but it was completely deserted. The sound faded gradually, leaving behind only the hum of the fluorescent lights and the unsettling impression of being observed. Many believe that the peculiar activity at Flushing Main Street Station is tied to its long history. The station has served Queens for decades, witnessing the ebb and flow of countless passengers, workers, and performers. Some speculate that the ghostly voices are echoes of people who once moved through the station, their sounds imprinted into the architecture itself. Others think the apparitions are spirits lingering after death, caught between the bustling life of the city above and the quiet isolation of the underground. Employees who work the late-night shifts describe an acute awareness of presence in the station, even when no one is around. Some claim to feel cold drafts moving along deserted corridors, the sensation of being followed, or the brief brush of air that feels like someone walking past. These experiences are often accompanied by visual phenomena, the flicker of a shadow, the sudden disappearance of a figure, or the shifting of lights that seem to bend around something unseen. One involves a cleaning crew who heard the distinct sounds of children laughing in a section of platform that had been closed for years. They approached the source, but found only silence in an empty, dusty hallway. Another account tells a security guard who saw two shadowy figures walking side by side along the platform. As he moved toward them, the figures dissolved into the wall, leaving no evidence of their presence except for the echo of footsteps that linger for several moments before fading completely. Visitors who have been at the station during late-night hours have also reported strange encounters. A commuter waiting for a delayed train described hearing faint conversations above the din of the tracks, accompanied by soft footsteps on the empty platform. When he looked, a fleeting figure passed across his line of sight, disappearing into the shadows before he could get a clear view. Others report the sensation of being watched, hearing a door click or a footstep, only to find the platform deserted when they turn. The station its layout contributes to its eerie qualities. Narrow corridors, curved tunnels, and multiple levels amplify echoes and distort perceptions. Sounds can travel in unexpected ways, carrying footsteps, whispers, and metallic scrapes through spaces that seem inaccessible. Shadows can bend and stretch along tiled walls, creating illusions of movement, while dim lighting heightens the sense of presence. The architecture allows for phenomena that seem inexplicable, feeding the stationized reputation among those who work the late-night shifts. For night shift employees, Flushing Main Street Station is far more than a transit hub. It is a place alive with unseen activity, where footsteps echo through empty platforms, ghostly voices drift through corridors, and shadowy figures move just beyond perception. Even when the station appears abandoned, it carries the weight of history, memory, and something unexplainable lingering beneath the surface. The sounds of phantom footsteps, faint whispers, and apparitions vanishing through walls remind workers that the station is never truly empty. Each night, the platforms, tunnels, and stairwells become a stage for these phenomena, a hidden world where echoes of the past intermingle with the present. Flushing Main Street Station, alive in ways most will never see, is a testament to the unseen and the unexplained, a place where the ordinary and the extraordinary coexist in the quiet hours after the city has gone to sleep. 14th Street Union Square Station in Manhattan is one of the busiest transit hubs in the city, a crossroads of multiple subway lines that funnels tens of thousands of passengers through its platforms each day. But when the late-night hours descend and the crowds vanish, the station transforms. Phantom footsteps echo across empty platforms, ghostly conversations drift through abandoned corridors, and shadowy figures move silently along passageways, disappearing as mysteriously as they appear. Late-night employees are the first to encounter these phenomena. Many describe hearing footsteps following them even in areas that are completely empty. Security guard Mitchell recounts a night when he was patrolling the southern platform after the last train had departed. The corridor behind him carried the sound of deliberate, measured steps. When he turned to investigate, the platform was deserted. The footsteps continued, pacing alongside him as though an invisible companion were walking in perfect rhythm. At one point, he stepped aside, expecting someone to pass, but no one appeared. The sound eventually faded, leaving Mitchell with a lingering sense of unease that lasted the rest of his shift. Phantom conversations are equally common. Workers often hear voices drifting through passageways, stairwells, and even maintenance areas that have been closed for decades. The voices are faint, often fragmented, and sometimes indistinguishable, yet they carry the unmistakable cadence of human speech. A custodian named Rivera described an encounter while cleaning an empty stairwell late one night. She heard muffled conversations just beyond the turn in the corridor, the tone casual, almost friendly. When she followed the sound to its source, the stairwell was empty, but the voices persisted for several moments before fading completely. She later mentioned that the experience was so vivid it felt like she was eavesdropping on people who had been there only moments before, yet no one had been. Shadows are another unnerving aspect of 14th Street Union Square at night. Employees frequently report seeing indistinct shapes moving across platforms and passageways. These figures rarely linger and often vanish abruptly, sometimes appearing to pass through walls or dissolve into the darkness. A maintenance worker named Thomas remembers seeing a tall, indistinct figure gliding across an abandoned corridor near the northern platforms. He called out, flashlight raised, but the figure disappeared, leaving only the echo of his own voice and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above. Thomas said the experience left him shaken, as if the station itself were alive and watching him. The combination of sounds and apparitions contributes to an eerie, almost tangible sense of presence. Doors creak open and close with no discernible cause. Metallic scrapes echo along tracks where no equipment has been used in years, and the faint hum of ventilation systems carries the impression of movement, even when the corridors are empty. Many late-night workers describe an overwhelming sensation that someone or something is nearby, even in areas that have been sealed off or are completely unstaffed. Several accounts from night shift employees stand out. One involves a security guard named Jackson, who was checking a locked maintenance corridor. As he passed by, he heard a snippet of conversation. Laughter, hurried words, and the sound of shoes on tile. He waited for someone to emerge, but the corridor remained sealed and empty. Moments later, he saw a shadow dart across the platform from one stairwell to another, vanishing before he could get a clear view. Jackson says the incident left him uneasy for weeks, constantly aware of movement at the edge of his vision whenever he worked late. Other employees report similar experiences, such as hearing phantom announcements or the hiss of train doors opening where no trains are scheduled. A transit inspector named Holden described hearing the deep rumble of an approaching train in a tunnel long since decommissioned. The vibration was subtle at first, then grew louder, accompanied by the hiss of doors and muffled voices of passengers. When he reached the platform, there was nothing. No train, no passengers, just the empty station and the faint echo of sounds that seemed impossible. Some speculate that the station-IS hauntings are tied to its long history. 14th Street Union Square has served Manhattan commuters for more than a century, witnessing the passage of countless travelers, workers, and performers. Many believe the phantom voices, footsteps, and shadows are echoes of people who once moved through the station. Others suggest that the station retains residual energy from its construction, the countless vibrations of trains, and the presence of humans over decades, manifesting as sensory phenomena that only become noticeable when the station is empty and quiet. Visitors who find themselves at the station after midnight occasionally report eerie experiences as well. One musician waiting for a delayed train described hearing distant conversations and footsteps on the opposite platform. When he looked, a fleeting shadow passed behind a pillar, vanishing before he could identify it. Another commuter reported the sensation of being followed along an empty corridor, the rhythmic tapping of shoes matching his own pace. When he turned, no one was there, but the sensation of being observed remained. The station-IS architecture seems to amplify these experiences. Long corridors, narrow stairwells, and multiple levels allow sound to travel in unpredictable ways, making footsteps, whispers, and metallic scrapes difficult to locate. Dim lighting and reflective tiles distort shadows, creating the impression of movement. Even seasoned employees find themselves disoriented, unsure whether they are witnessing real phenomena or illusions magnified by the station-IS design. For late-night staff, 14th Street Union Square Station is far more than a transit hub. It is a place where the ordinary and the inexplicable coexist. Phantom conversations, unseen footsteps, and moving shadows turn the empty platforms and corridors into a theater of the unknown. The station carries echoes of the past, preserving fragments of lives long gone, replaying them silently for anyone who works or wanders there at night. Even when trains have stopped running and the platforms are deserted, the station is never truly empty. The ordinary streets above meet the extraordinary mysteries below. It is a living archive of movement, sound, and presence, a hidden world where the past lingers just out of reach, and where the ordinary streets above meet the extraordinary mysteries below, and where the past lingers just out of reach, and where the ordinary streets above meet the extraordinary mysteries below. It is a living archive of movement, sound, and presence, a hidden world where the past lingers just out of reach, and where the ordinary streets above meet the extraordinary mysteries below, and where the past lingers just out of reach, and where the ordinary streets above meet the extraordinary mysteries below. It is a living archive of movement, sound, and presence, a hidden world where the past lingers just out of reach, and where the ordinary streets above meet the extraordinary mysteries below, and where the past lingers just out of reach, and where the ordinary streets above meet the extraordinary mysteries below. It is a living archive of movement, sound, and presence, a hidden world where the past lingers just out of reach. Broadway Lafayette Station in Manhattan is a sprawling hub that connects multiple subway lines, serving thousands of commuters each day. By morning and afternoon, it is alive with the familiar chaos of the city, the screech of trains, the chatter of travelers, the rhythmic clatter of footsteps across platforms. Announcements echo through the halls, guiding passengers to their destinations, while the scent of coffee and street food drifts from nearby vendors. Yet when the last train departs and the rush of commuters fades, the station takes on an entirely different presence. Late-night employees and occasional visitors have reported experiences that are as unsettling as they are inexplicably of voices and laughter emanating from empty corridors, shadowy figures gliding across platforms, and phantom trains roaring through tunnels where no rails are in service. One of the most common phenomena is the sound of voices in places that should be silent. Maintenance workers and security personnel describe hearing conversations drifting through hallways and stairwells long after the last passengers have left. These voices often sound casual, almost friendly, as if a group of people is walking past, chatting in low tones. A security guard named Henderson recalled one night when he was checking a deserted passage near the southern platform. He heard laughter and the faint murmur of a conversation just beyond the corner. Expecting to find late-night travelers, he cautiously turned the corner, but there was no one. The voices continued for several minutes before fading, leaving him with only the echo of his own footsteps and a sense of being observed. Laughter is another frequent occurrence, sometimes light and playful, other times abrupt and startling. A maintenance worker, Rivera, described hearing what sounded like multiple people laughing in a rhythm. The sound seemed to come from different directions at once, filling the station with a sense of activity that wasn't there. She recalls freezing in place as the laughter echoed through an abandoned platform before fading as suddenly as it had begun. The experience left her with an eerie awareness that the station itself was alive with unseen movement. Phantom trains are another unsettling element of Broadway Lafayette's late-night activity. Workers report hearing the low rumble of engines approaching, followed by the screech of wheels against rails, and the sharp hiss of doors opening and closing, even when no train is scheduled. One night, a transit inspector was checking a rarely used track. He heard the unmistakable sound of an approaching train, the vibrations growing stronger beneath his feet. As the train drew near, the hiss of doors and the faint murmur of passengers reached his ears. Morales braced himself, expecting a train car to emerge, but the platform remained empty. The sound faded gradually, leaving him with a lingering vibration in the floor and the unsettling feeling that the train had indeed passed, yet left no physical trace. Shadowy figures are perhaps the most unnerving phenomena observed at Broadway Lafayette. Employees have reported seeing indistinct shapes moving across platforms, stairwells, and corridors. These figures rarely linger, often disappearing abruptly or appearing to pass through walls. A janitor named Patel described an encounter in which a tall shadow moved across an empty platform. When he shined his flashlight in its direction, the figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness, leaving only the faint hum of the lights above. Moments later, he heard the soft echo of footsteps retreating down a nearby tunnel. Patel recalls that the experience left him with a lingering sense that the station itself was aware of his presence. The combination of sounds and shadows creates an atmosphere of constant unease during late-night shifts. Doors creak open and close without explanation, metallic scraping echoes along unused tracks, and the faint murmur of voices drifts unpredictably through deserted corridors. Employees describe a heightened awareness, a feeling of being watched or followed, as they move through the station. Some have reported the sensation of a cold draft brushing past them, even in areas where the ventilation system is off. Several incidents stand out among the many accounts. One involves a security guard named Jackson, who was inspecting an upper-level corridor. He heard the faint chatter of voices and the sound of shoes on tile. When he approached, the corridor was sealed and empty. Moments later, a shadow passed across the platform below, vanishing before he could get a clear view. Another incident describes a maintenance worker who heard the screech of a train along a disused track, followed by the faint sound of passengers conversing. When he investigated, there was no thing and no train, no people, only the echo of sounds that seemed to exist independently of the physical station. Some believe the haunting phenomena are linked to the station's long history. Broadway Lafayette has served Manhattan for decades, witnessing the movement of countless travelers, workers, and performers. The phantom voices, laughter, and moving shadows may be echoes of people who once walked the platforms, lingering in the station as residual energy. Others speculate that the underground architecture amplifies ordinary sounds in strange ways, creating illusions of presence that feel real to those who work late at night. Visitors who find themselves at the station after dark have occasionally reported eerie experiences. A commuter waiting for a delayed train described hearing footsteps pacing in time with his own, followed by laughter echoing down an empty corridor. When he turned, a shadow passed behind a pillar, disappearing before he could focus on it. Another person described hearing the rumble of a phantom train and the hiss of doors opening, only to find the platform completely empty. The stationized design seems to enhance the uncanny experiences. Curved corridors, narrow passageways, and multiple levels carry sound in unexpected ways, making footsteps, laughter, and voices difficult to locate. Dim lighting and reflective tiles distort shadows, creating an impression of movement where none exists. Even seasoned employees find themselves disoriented, unsure whether they are witnessing real phenomena or illusions magnified by the stationized architecture. For late-night workers, Broadway Lafayette Station is more than a transit hub. It becomes a space where ordinary life intersects with the inexplicable. Phantom conversations, ghostly laughter, moving shadows, and unseen trains transform the empty platforms and corridors into a stage for phenomena that defy explanation. The station seems to preserve fragments of the past, replaying them in the quiet hours for those who remain after dark. Even when trains have stopped running and the platforms are deserted, Broadway Lafayette is never truly empty. Phantom footsteps, laughter, and shadows serve as reminders that the station carries more than commuters. It holds echoes of past lives, memories of movement, and presences that linger long after the last passenger is gone. In the late-night stillness, the station awakens in ways that most will never witness, a subterranean world of sound, shadow, and mystery hidden beneath the streets of Manhattan. The station and tunnels buzz with the sound of trains, the chatter of hurried passengers, and the rhythmic clatter of footsteps on tile floors. Yet, when evening falls and the crowds disperse, the station transforms into an entirely different environment. Despite minimal traffic during the late-night hours, employees report experiences that are as unnerving as they are inexplicably. Phantom trains that seem to roll through the tunnels, footsteps echoing along abandoned platforms, and a quiet presence that feels distinctly alive within the station's walls. Phantom trains are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Workers describe hearing the familiar roar of engines approaching, the metallic screech of wheels against rails, and the hiss of train doors opening and closing, all when no train is scheduled. A maintenance technician named Rivera recounted an experience while checking a rarely used track late one night. He heard the unmistakable rumble of a train drawing near. The vibration under his feet grew steadily, accompanied by the familiar pneumatic hiss of doors opening. Rivera braced himself, expecting to see a train emerge from the darkness. But the platform remained completely empty. The sound gradually faded, leaving only the lingering sensation of vibration, and the uncanny impression that a train had indeed passed, invisible to the eye. Footsteps are another common occurrence at the Rockefeller Center shuttle. Employees often hear deliberate, rhythmic steps echoing through abandoned corridors and along the platforms. Security guard Daniels described a night when he was walking the northbound platform checking emergency exits. Behind him, he heard a second set of footsteps pacing in perfect sync with his own. He turned abruptly, expecting a late-night commuter, but the platform was empty. The echoing footsteps continued briefly before fading into silence, leaving him with a sensation of an invisible companion moving alongside him. Many late-night workers describe the sensation of being followed as one of the most unsettling aspects of working in the station, as it seems to suggest a presence that is unseen but unmistakably aware. Abandoned tunnels and passageways contribute to the eerie atmosphere. Workers report hearing metallic scraping noises, like maintenance carts moving along the tracks, in areas that have been closed for years. The acoustics of the station amplify these sounds, creating an effect as if something or something is moving just out of sight. One night, A janitor named Patel was inspecting a darkened side corridor when he heard the sharp, rhythmic scraping of metal along the rails. He cautiously followed the sound, flashlight in hand, but the corridor was completely empty. Moments later, he heard the sound again, echoing from the opposite direction, vanishing into the depths of the tunnel. Ghostly voices and muffled conversations are also frequently reported. They are faint, fragmented, and often seem to come from stairwells, maintenance areas, or disused platforms. A night shift transit inspector, Morales, described hearing indistinct chatter while walking along the platform. The voices were casual, almost friendly, yet no one was present. When he attempted to locate the source, the sound seemed to retreat, shifting from one corridor to another, always just beyond reach. These auditory phenomena contribute to the pervasive sense that the station itself is alive, replaying echoes of activity long past. Shadowy figures add a visual dimension to the hauntings. Employees have reported seeing vague silhouettes moving through tunnels and platforms, vanishing suddenly or appearing to glide through walls. Security guard Jackson recalled observing a tall figure moving along the platform late one night. He shined his flashlight, but the figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness, leaving only the faint hum of the station's fluorescent lights above. Moments later, he heard the echo of footsteps retreating into the distance, as if the figure had walked away through some unseen passage. The combination of sounds, shadows, and subtle movement creates an atmosphere that is both disorienting and haunting. Doors sometimes creak open or shut without explanation, and faint vibrations echo through the floor even in areas that have been closed for years. Employees describe a sensation of being observed, of a presence moving just beyond their perception, and the inexplicable awareness that the station is replaying fragmented activity from decades past. Several incidents stand out among these late-night encounters. One involves a janitor who heard the hiss of train doors and the rush of passengers along a platform that had been abandoned for years. When he investigated, there was no train, no passengers, nothing to account for sound. On another occasion, a security guard reported hearing rhythmic footsteps following him through a disused corridor, the sound matching his own pace perfectly before fading suddenly into silence. Both incidents, and countless others, suggest that the station retains traces of movement, sound, and life long after the actual activity has ended. Some speculate that the haunting phenomena are linked to the station's long history. Rockefeller Center Shuttle has served Midtown Manhattan for decades, carrying commuters, tourists, and workers through its tunnels. It is possible that the echoes of countless footsteps, conversations, and train movements have left an imprint on the station itself. Others believe that spirits or residual energy linger, manifesting as the phantom trains, footsteps, and muffled voices that haunt late-night employees. Regardless of the explanation, the experiences are undeniably real to those who witness them. Even occasional late-night visitors have reported eerie experiences. One commuter waiting for the last train described hearing footsteps pacing in perfect rhythm with his own, followed by the faint hiss of doors opening. When he looked, the platform was empty and no train appeared. Another witness reported hearing a phantom train pass through a side tunnel, accompanied by the soft murmur of passengers, only to find the tunnel completely deserted. The stationized design amplifies these phenomena. Narrow corridors, multiple levels, and tiled walls carry sound in unexpected ways, while dim lighting and reflective surfaces distort shadows. Sound of footsteps, metallic scrapes, and voices travel further and echo strangely, creating the impression of movement where none exists. For late-night staff, Rockefeller Center Shuttle is more than a transit hub. It becomes a space where ordinary life intersects with the inexplicable. Phantom trains, unseen footsteps, muffled voices, and moving shadows transform empty platforms and abandoned tunnels into a theater of the unknown. The station seems to preserve fragments of the past, replaying them for those who remain after dark. Even when trains have stopped and the platforms are empty, Rockefeller Center Shuttle is never truly deserted. The phantom footsteps, ghostly voices, and trains that pass without present serve as reminders that the station holds more than commuters and steel tracks. It is a hidden world beneath the streets of Manhattan, where echoes of the past linger Shadows move, and the ordinary transforms into extraordinary after night falls. Bowling Green Station in Manhattan is one of the city's oldest subway stations, a historic hub that has been serving commuters for over a century. By day, it is a bustling intersection of multiple subway lines, a place where business people, tourists, and local residents converge to navigate the heart of the financial district. The platforms are alive with the rhythmic clatter of train wheels, the hum of escalators, and the chatter of thousands of passengers moving through the station. But when the last trains depart and the crowds thin, the station transforms into an eerie, almost otherworldly space. Employees who work late-night shifts often report experiences that are unsettling and inexplicably. Ghostly figures moving past turnstiles, phantom footsteps echoing through abandoned hallways, and whispers that drift along platforms where no one is present. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Bowling Green is the appearance of ghostly figures. Security personnel and maintenance workers describe seeing vague silhouettes moving past turnstiles or along platforms, only to vanish moments later. A security guard named Hernandez recounted a night when he was monitoring the southern entrance after the last train had left. He saw a dark, humanoid shape glide past the turnstiles and continue toward the platform. He called out, but there was no response. When he approached, the figure had disappeared entirely, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps behind. Such encounters are not isolated, with multiple employees reporting similar sightings in different areas of the station. Phantom footsteps are another common occurrence. They often appear in abandoned corridors or on platforms long after the station has emptied. A maintenance worker named Patel described walking along an empty hallway near the northern platforms, when he suddenly heard the sound of shoes clicking against the tiles behind him. He turned, expecting a late-night commuter or a colleague, but the hallway was completely deserted. The footsteps continued, pacing in rhythm with his own, before fading gradually into silence. Workers frequently report that these footsteps sometimes echo in a pattern inconsistent with human movement, appearing and disappearing unpredictably, as if an unseen presence is moving through the station at will. Whispers are yet another unsettling phenomenon reported by late-night staff. These voices are faint and fragmented, drifting through stairwells, maintenance rooms, and passageways that are otherwise empty. A transit inspector named Morales described hearing soft murmurs coming from a closed-off corridor while inspecting the station late one night. The voices were indistinct, almost like a conversation in another language, and seemed to respond to his movements, moving further away whenever he approached. When he reached the source, the corridor was sealed and empty, yet the whispers persisted for a few more moments before fading entirely. Such experiences contribute to the feeling that the station itself is alive, replaying fragments of activity from decades past. Doors are also reported to open and close of their own accord in abandoned areas of Bowling Green Station. Employees describe hearing the faint creak of a door swinging open or the click of a latch, even when no one is present. One night, a custodian named Rivera was checking into Shoe's maintenance area when she heard a door open behind her. When she turned, no one was there. Moments later, she heard a series of soft, deliberate footsteps moving along the hallway, as if Summonia or some Thinga were inspecting the space in her presence. Such incidents, combined with the phantom figures, footsteps, and whispers, create an atmosphere of constant unease for those who work the late-night shifts. Some of the most memorable encounters involve multiple phenomena occurring simultaneously. One security guard, Jackson, reported seeing a shadowy figure move past the turnstiles while hearing faint whispers in the adjacent hallway. At the same time, he heard the distinct echo of footsteps pacing along a platform that had been empty for hours. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena was so convincing that Jackson felt the station itself was aware of his presence. These experiences are not limited to employees. Occasional late-night commuters have reported similar encounters, including fleeting glimpses of figures, the sensation of being followed, and the faint murmur of voices in empty corridors. The architecture of Bowling Green Station contributes to these uncanny experiences. Its long, narrow passageways, curved stairwells, and multi-level platforms carry sound in unusual ways, amplifying footsteps and whispers, and creating echoes that seem to originate from nowhere. Shadows are distorted by dim lighting and reflective tiles, making movement appear where none exists. Abandoned areas provide spaces for figures to appear and vanish, and the acoustics of the station enhance even the faintest noises, making them seem far closer or more deliberate than they really are. Many late-night employees speculate that the phenomena are linked to the station's long history. Bowling Green is one of the oldest stations in the New York City subway system, and countless commuters, workers, and travelers have passed through its platforms over the decades. Some believe that the ghostly figures and voices are echoes of people who once inhabited the station, lingering in the space even after their departure. Others suggest that the unusual sounds and apparitions are residual energy left behind by the constant movement of trains, footsteps, and human activity, manifesting in ways that become most noticeable during quiet hours. Visitors who have remained at the station late at night report similar experiences. A musician waiting for a delayed train described hearing the soft click of footsteps matching his own pace along an otherwise empty platform, followed by the faint murmur of voices from a nearby hallway. When he turned, he glimpsed a shadow pass along the wall, disappearing before he could get a clear view. Another commuter reported hearing doors creak and whispers drifting through a deserted passageway while waiting for a train that would not arrive for another hour. These experiences, though often fleeting, leave lasting impressions of the station as a place where the ordinary and the unexplained coexist. For those who work the late-night shifts, Bowling Green Station is more than just a transit hub. It becomes a place where time seems fluid, where the echoes of the past and the present intermingle. Phantom figures, footsteps, and whispers create a hidden world within the station, a subterranean space where the ordinary sounds of trains and commuters transform into phenomena that defy explanation. Even when the turnstiles stand empty and the platforms are deserted, Bowling Green Station is never truly empty. The ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, and drifting whispers serve as a constant reminder that the station holds more than commuters and trains. It is a place where the past lingers in the present, a hidden layer beneath the streets of Manhattan, where unseen activity unfolds long after the city above has gone to sleep. Union Square Station in Manhattan is one of New York City's busiest subway hubs, a sprawling nexus where multiple lines converge and thousands of commuters pass through every day. By daylight, the station is a symphony of sound. Trains rumbling in and out of platforms, announcements echoing across corridors, and the constant hum of conversations as travelers hurry to their destinations. Yet when the evening crowds disperse and the last trains leave the station, Union Square transforms. The vibrant energy of the day gives way to a quieter, more haunting atmosphere. Late-night employees and occasional visitors report ghostly apparitions, phantom train noises, footsteps echoing on empty platforms, and even distant laughter that seems to emanate from nowhere. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the appearance of ghostly figures along deserted platforms. Security personnel and maintenance workers describe seeing vague silhouettes gliding across the tracks or walking along the edges of the platform. These figures often vanish suddenly, disappearing into shadows or seemingly passing through walls. A night shift security guard named Hernandez recalled one particular night when he was patrolling the northern platform. He noticed a tall, indistinct figure moving across the platform toward the stairs. He raised his flashlight and called out, but the figure dissolved into the darkness before he could reach it. Moments later, he heard the faint echo of footsteps retreating down the corridor. Such sightings are not isolated. Many employees report similar experiences in multiple areas of the station, suggesting that the apparitions are persistent presence after dark. Phantom train sounds are another common occurrence. Employees often report hearing the rumble of approaching trains, the metallic screech of wheels on rails, and the hiss of doors opening and closing, even when no train is scheduled. A maintenance worker named Rivera recounted a night when she was checking the tracks near a disused platform. She heard a deep vibration beneath her feet, followed by the familiar hiss of train doors. She waited, expecting a train to emerge in the tunnel, but the platform remained completely empty. The sounds faded gradually, leaving her with the eerie impression that a train had passed through unseen. Many late-night staff describe these phantom trains as startlingly realistic, with vibrations, echoes, and ambient noises that mimic the experience of a real train. Footsteps echoing through empty corridors are another unsettling feature of the station after hours. Late-night workers frequently report hearing measured, deliberate steps following them through hallways or pacing across deserted platforms. A custodian named Patel described walking along the southern platform while performing routine cleaning duties. Behind him, he heard footsteps in rhythm with his own. He turned abruptly, expecting a colleague or a late commuter, but the platform was empty. The footsteps continued for a short distance before fading into silence. For many employees, the sensation of being followed by unseen presences is a recurring source of unease. Distant laughter is also commonly reported. Employees describe hearing faint, high-pitched giggles echoing through stairwells, tunnels, and empty corridors. The laughter often seems to shift in location, appearing to come from different directions, and moving unpredictably. One security guard, Jackson, recalled hearing laughter coming from a stairwell leading to a closed-off maintenance area. When he investigated, he found the corridor deserted. Moments later, he heard the laughter again, this time from the far end of the platform, fading into silence. Such experiences create the unsettling impression that the station itself is alive with activity, despite the absence of passengers. Doors opening and closing without explanation are another reported phenomenon. Late-night staff describe hearing the faint creak of doors swinging open or shutting in areas that have been long abandoned. One night, a janitor named Morales was inspecting a maintenance corridor when he heard a door click behind him. When he turned, no one was present. Moments later, the echo of footsteps sounded along the platform, as if someone or something was walking nearby. These auditory phenomena often coincide with visual sightings, making the late-night station feel inhabited by unseen presences. The combination of phantom trains, footsteps, laughter, and ghostly figures contributes to an overwhelming atmosphere of unease. The reflective tiles and dim lighting create illusions of movement, making it difficult to distinguish reality from perception. The long corridors, narrow stairwells, and multi-level platforms of Union Square Station amplify these phenomena, carrying sounds in unexpected ways and distorting shadows. The reflective tiles and dim lighting create illusions of movement, making it difficult to distinguish reality from perception. Employees often report a heightened awareness when moving through the station at night, feeling as though the space is observing or reacting to their presence. Many speculate that the paranormal activity is linked to the station's long and storied history. Union Square has been a central hub of Manhattana's transit system for decades, witnessing the passage of countless commuters, workers, and performers. Some believe that the apparitions and phantom sounds are residual echoes of people who once moved to the station, their presence somehow imprinted on the architecture. Others suggest that the vibrations and energy of daily activity over generations may linger in the tunnels and platforms, manifesting as ghostly phenomena when the station becomes quiet and still. Late-night visitors to the station occasionally share similar accounts. A musician waiting for a delayed train reported hearing footsteps matching his own pace along an empty platform, accompanied by the faint sound of distant laughter. When he turned, he saw a fleeting shadow pass across the far side of the tracks, disappearing instantly. Another commuter described the eerie sensation of being watched while descending a stairwell, hearing whispers and footsteps behind him, only to find the corridor completely empty when he looked back. For employees working late shifts, Union Square Station is more than a transit hub. It becomes a space where ordinary life intersects with the inexplicable. Phantom trains, ghostly apparitions, footsteps, and distant laughter transform the empty platforms and abandoned passageways into a hidden world. The station appears to preserve fragments of past activity, replaying them silently for anyone present after dark. Even when trains have stopped running and platforms are deserted, the ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, and distant laughter serve as reminders. that the station contains more than commuters and rails. It is a subterranean realm where echoes of the past persist, where shadows move, and where the ordinary urban environment reveals itself to be a stage for the extraordinary. In the stillness of night, the station awakens in ways that are unseen by most, a hidden world beneath Manhattan that comes alive long after the last train has departed. 125th Street Station in Manhattan is one of the city's busiest transit hubs, a vital link for commuters traveling through Harlem and beyond. By day, the station hums when energetic trains arrive and depart with precision. Announcements echo across the concourse, and crowds of passengers hurry to catch their connections. The platforms vibrate with the rhythmic clatter of wheels against rails, while conversations, footsteps, and the occasional shout create a symphony of urban motion. Yet when the sun sets and the last trains depart, the station transforms. The familiar bustle disappears, leaving behind an empty labyrinth of platforms, corridors, and stairwells. It is during these late-night hours that employees, cleaners, and security personnel report experiences that defy explanation as shadows moving across deserted platforms, phantom train sounds, and mysterious announcements that seem to come from nowhere. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at 125th Street is the sighting of shadowy figures. Employees who work late-night shifts often describe seeing indistinct shapes moving along platforms or through abandoned corridors. These figures rarely linger and often vanish as suddenly as they appear. A night shift security guard named Hernandez recalled an evening when he was performing his rounds on the northern platform. He noticed a dark silhouette gliding past the edge of the platform. He called out, expecting a commuter who had stayed behind. But the figure disappeared into the shadows before he could approach. Moments later, he heard the echo of footsteps receding down an empty tunnel. Many workers describe similar experiences, suggesting that these shadowy figures are a consistent presence when the station is empty. Phantom train sounds are another unsettling feature of the station. Employees frequently report hearing the rumble of trains approaching, the screech of wheels against tracks, and the hiss of doors opening. The screech of wheels against tracks, and the hiss of doors opening, even in areas where no train is scheduled. A maintenance worker named Rivera described one night when she was inspecting a side platform that is rarely used. She heard the vibration of an approaching train beneath her feet, accompanied by the familiar sound of doors sliding open. She waited for a train to emerge from the tunnel, but none appeared. The sounds gradually faded, leaving her with the eerie sensation that a train had indeed passed, invisible and unheard by anyone else. Many staff members have reported similar experiences, with phantom trains producing vibrations, ambient sounds, and even the faint murmur of passengers as though the platform were still occupied. Unexplained announcements are another aspect of the station-es late-night phenomena. Employees and cleaners often report hearing announcements echoing across deserted corridors and platforms. These may be standard transit alerts or unintelligible messages, sometimes repeated multiple times. One night, a transit inspector named Morales heard a recorded announcement over the station SPA system warning passengers about a delayed train. The message continued to repeat even though the station was completely empty and no trains were scheduled. When he attempted to trace the source, there was no visible control panel transmitting the announcement. Such occurrences contribute to the sense that the station retains an echo of activity long after the last passenger has left. Footsteps are also frequently reported throughout the station. Late-night workers describe hearing measured, deliberate steps echoing along platforms and corridors. A custodian named Patel recounted a time when he was cleaning the southbound platform. Behind him, he heard footsteps pacing in perfect sync with his own. Turning around, he expected to see another worker, but the platform was empty. The footsteps continued for several moments before fading into silence, leaving Patel with the sensation of being followed by an invisible presence. These auditory phenomena are often coupled with visual sightings, making the station feel inhabited even in the absence of human activity. Doors creaking and opening by themselves add another layer to the eerie atmosphere. Employees report hearing doors swing open or shut without explanation, often in areas of the station that have been closed for years. One janitor described walking through a maintenance corridor when a heavy metal door creaked open behind her. She spun around, flashlight raised, but no one was there. Moments later, she heard the faint echo of footsteps retreating along the platform. Incidents like this are common in employee reports, creating an unsettling sense that the station itself is aware of movement and presence. The combination of shadowy figures, phantom trains, unexplained announcements, and footsteps contributes. Phantom trains, unexplained announcements, and footsteps contributes to a pervasive sense of unease during late-night shifts. The station-IS architecture amplifies these experiences. Long corridors, narrow stairwells, and multi-level platforms carry sound unpredictably, making echoes seem closer or farther away than they really are. Dim lighting and reflective surfaces distort shadows, giving the impression of movement where none exists. Even experienced employees sometimes struggle to distinguish between optical illusions and genuine phenomena. Many late-night staff speculate that the station-IS hauntings are linked to its history. 125th Street has been an active transit hub for decades, witnessing the movement of countless commuters, performers, and city workers. Some believe that the ghostly figures and phantom sounds are residual impressions of people who once inhabited the station. Others suggest that the vibrations of daily life over decades of trains rumbling, footsteps echoing, and the constant movement of humanity have left traces in the structure itself, manifesting as visual and auditory phenomena when the station is quiet. Visitors who remain in the station late at night occasionally report similar experiences. One commuter waiting for a delayed train described hearing footsteps pacing alongside him, followed by the faint rumble of a train approaching. When he turned to look, the platform was empty, and no train emerged from the tunnel. Such experiences suggest that the station holds a hidden layer, a world of movement and sound that exists alongside the ordinary urban environment. For employees working late shifts, 125th Street Station becomes more than a transit hub. It is a space where ordinary life intersects with the inexplicable. Shadowy figures, phantom trains, unexplained announcements, and footsteps transform empty platforms and abandoned corridors into a theater of unseen activity. The station preserves fragments of the past, replaying them silently for anyone present after dark. Even when the last train has departed and platforms are deserted, 125th Street Station is never truly empty. The ghostly figures, phantom trains, footsteps, and distant echoes serve as reminders that the station contains more than commuters and steel rails. Beneath the streets of Harlem lies a hidden world, where the ordinary intersects with the extraordinary, and where the past continues to move and whisper long after the city above has gone to sleep. Court Street Station in Brooklyn is a peculiar relic of New York City's subway history, a decommissioned platform that sits quietly beneath the bustling streets above. Unlike active stations, it no longer serves trains or passengers, yet its tunnels and corridors retain an air of movement, as if the echoes of its past never truly faded. Employees who work in nearby operational areas and urban explorers who occasionally gain access report eerie experiences that defy explanation. Ghostly figures of past commuters are often seen wandering the platform. Phantom footsteps echo along abandoned corridors, and doors open and close seemingly of their own accord. Security personnel and maintenance workers alike describe seeing vague, human-shaped silhouettes gliding across the platform or disappearing into walls. A night shift security guard named Hernandez recalled an evening when he was checking the decommissioned platform for safety hazards. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a figure standing near the tracks, as if waiting for a train. When he focused his flashlight on the shape, it had vanished, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps in its wake. These fleeting sightings are often accompanied by a sense of presence, a feeling that the station itself is alive and aware, replaying the movements of commuters long gone. Phantom footsteps are another common occurrence. Employees report hearing measured, deliberate steps pacing along the abandoned corridors or echoing across the empty platform. A maintenance worker named Patel recounted an experience in which he was performing a routine inspection of the old platform. He heard the unmistakable sound of shoes striking the tiles, moving closer and then retreating. When he called out, no one answered, and the corridor remained empty. The footsteps continued intermittently, fading and returning as if the station were keeping rhythm with an invisible crowd. For many workers, the sensation of being followed or observed by unseen presences is deeply unsettling. Phantom doors contribute further to the station's eerie atmosphere. Employees have reported hearing doors swing open and shut on their own, often in hallways that have been sealed off for decades. One late-night janitor, Rivera, described walking through a maintenance corridor when she heard the heavy creak of a door opening behind her. She turned, flashlight raised, but there was no one present. Moments later, the sound of a door slamming echoed somewhere deeper in the platform, followed by the soft murmur of footsteps retreating into the distance. These incidents, combined with the sight of ghostly figures, create an environment in which the decommissioned station feels inhabited, despite being officially abandoned. In addition to the visual and auditory phenomena, unexplained environmental changes are often reported. Employees speak of sudden drafts in enclosed corridors, cold spots along the platform, and subtle vibrations that mimic the movement of trains. One security guard, Jackson, described standing near the tracks when he felt a low vibration beneath his feet, accompanied by the sound of distant wheels grinding on rails. When he looked down the tunnel, there was no train. The sensation left him with the unnerving impression that the station retained a memory of movement, replaying it for those present after dark. Some of the most striking experiences involve multiple phenomena occurring simultaneously. A transit worker named Morales described walking along the old platform late at night when he saw a shadowy figure gliding across the tracks. While hearing footsteps echoing behind him and the faint creak of a door opening somewhere deeper in the corridor, he called out, but the platform remained empty. Moments later, the sounds faded, leaving only the soft hum of the ventilation system, and the sensation that the station had been observing him the entire time. These layered encounters reinforce the perception that Court Street Station is more than a relic. It is a living archive of movement and presence, replaying fragments of its past, in ways that are tangible to anyone present after dark. The architecture of Court Street Station amplifies these phenomena. Long, narrow corridors, arched ceilings, and tiled walls create unusual acoustics, allowing footsteps, doors, and distant noises to echo unpredictably. Dim lighting and shadowed corners distort shapes, making fleeting movements appear more solid than they are. Abandoned stairwells, platforms, and service rooms provide spaces for figures to appear and vanish, while the reflective surfaces of old tiles scatter light in ways that enhance illusions of movement. Even seasoned employees report being disoriented by the station's acoustics and visuals, questioning whether they are witnessing genuine phenomena or the effects of an environment designed to amplify sound and shadow. Many late-night workers believe that the phenomena at Court Street are linked to the station's history. Opened decades ago and eventually decommissioned due to low traffic, the station once thrived with commuters moving to and from Brooklyn and Manhattan. It is possible that the shadowy figures' footsteps and phantom doors are residual impressions of people who once traversed the platform, a lingering echo of activity repeated over decades. Others speculate that the constant vibrations and movement of trains, combined with the presence of humans over time, left an imprint on the structure itself, producing experiences that only become noticeable when the station is quiet and unoccupied. Occasionally, urban explorers and late-night visitors report similar experiences. One explorer described seeing a dark silhouette near the tracks, disappearing as he approached, while hearing the faint echo of footsteps behind him. Another visitor reported hearing a door swing open in a corridor that had been sealed for years, followed by a low, distant hum that resembled the sound of a departing train. Such accounts reinforce the sense that Court Street Station is never truly empty, even when officially abandoned. For those who work or wander the platform after hours, Court Street Station becomes more than a decommissioned station. It is a hidden realm where past and present coexist. Shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, and unexplained door movements transform the empty platform into a space where the ordinary and the supernatural intersect. The station appears to preserve fragments of its history, replaying them silently for anyone present after dark. Even decades after its closure, Court Street Station is never truly deserted. Ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, and doors that move of their own accord remind visitors and employees alike that beneath Brooklyn-esque streets lies a world of echoes, shadows, and memories. In the silence of night, the station awakens in ways invisible to the casual observer, a subterranean landscape where the past continues to move, whisper, and linger long after the city above has gone to sleep. Sutter Avenue Station in Brooklyn is a vital stop along the City's subway network, connecting neighborhoods and serving countless commuters daily. By day, the station hums with activity. The rhythmic clatter of train wheels, the steady murmur of conversations, the echo of announcements guiding passengers to their destinations. The platforms are alive with motion, and every corridor carries the unmistakable energy of a bustling transit hub. However, as night falls and the last trains leave the station, Sutter Avenue transforms into a space that is quieter, darker, and, according to those who work late shifts, unsettling. Workers and late-night staff often report strange occurrences, phantom footsteps pacing across deserted platforms, voices echoing through empty corridors, and shadowy forms watching from the edges of platforms, disappearing when approached. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Sutter Avenue Station is the sound of footsteps with no visible source. Late-night employees describe hearing measured, deliberate steps echoing across the platforms or down narrow hallways. A security guard named Hernandez recalled an evening when he was patrolling the southern platform after the last train had departed. He heard a set of footsteps pacing behind him, matching his own rhythm. Turning, he expected to see a late commuter or colleague, but the platform was empty. The footsteps continued intermittently, fading and returning as if an invisible presence were moving through the station independently. Many workers describe the sensation of being followed as profoundly unsettling, creating a constant awareness that they are not alone, even in the emptiness of night. Phantom voices are another recurring feature of the station's late-night atmosphere. Workers report hearing conversations and whispers drifting through stairwells, tunnels, and deserted passageways. These voices are often faint, indistinct, and seem to respond to the movements of those present. One maintenance worker, Rivera, described an experience where she heard fragmented sentences and low murmurs emanating from a disused corridor. As she approached, the voices seemed to move further away, always just out of reach. When she reached the source, the corridor was empty. The combination of disembodied speech and silence left her with a lingering impression that the station itself was replaying fragments of past activity. Shadowy forms are also frequently observed at Sutter Avenue Station, adding a visual layer to the auditory phenomena. Employees report seeing vague, human-shaped silhouettes at the edges of platforms or moving across hallways, often disappearing when approached. A late-night janitor named Patel described cleaning the northbound platform when he glimpsed a tall figure standing near the platform edge. As he approached, the figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows. Moments later, he heard a faint echo of footsteps retreating into the tunnels, leaving him with a distinct sensation that he had been observed. These shadowy presences are often described as fleeting and difficult to focus on, yet their repeated appearances have created a reputation among staff that certain parts of the station are inhabited by unseen observers. Doors opening and closing on their own are another element of the station's late-night mystique. Employees report hearing the creak of doors swinging, often in maintenance corridors or passageways long since sealed. One security guard, Jackson, recounted a night when he was inspecting a stairwell leading to a closed platform. He heard the sound of a door opening behind him, followed by the soft echo of footsteps moving away. Turning around, he found the corridor empty. These auditory anomalies, combined with shadowy figures and phantom footsteps, reinforce the feeling that the station has a presence beyond the living. The architecture of Sutter Avenue Station amplifies these eerie experiences. Long, narrow corridors, multiple levels, and tiled walls carry sound in unpredictable ways, allowing footsteps, whispers and doors that echo and overlap. Dim lighting casts shadows that seem to shift and move, and reflective surfaces can create the illusion of motion where there is none. Even employees who have worked at the station for years find themselves disoriented by these effects, questioning whether what they are experiencing is real or a trick of perception amplified by the station's design. Some workers speculate that the haunting phenomena are linked to the station's history. Sutter Avenue has been a key transit hub for decades, witnessing the passage of countless commuters, local residents, and workers. The phantom footsteps, shadowy figures, and voices may be residual echoes of people who once moved through the station, leaving an imprint that persists long after their physical presence has vanished. Others suggest that the vibrations, sounds, and constant movement of trains over decades have left a kind of energetic residue, manifesting as auditory and visual phenomena when the station becomes quiet at night. Visitors who remain in the station after hours occasionally experience similar occurrences. One commuter described hearing footsteps pacing alongside him on an empty platform, followed by a faint whisper that seemed to come from the stairwell above. Turning to look, he glimpsed a shadow across the edge of the platform, before vanishing into darkness. Another visitor reported hearing disembodied voices echoing through a passageway that was otherwise sealed, accompanied by the sound of a door creaking open. These experiences suggest that the station, even when deserted, is a space where ordinary urban life intersects with lingering traces of the past. The combination of phantom footsteps, ghostly voices, and shadowy forms creates an atmosphere that is both unsettling and mesmerizing. The empty platforms and deserted corridors become a stage for phenomena that defy logical explanation, offering a glimpse into a hidden layer of the city's subterranean world. For late-night workers, Sutter Avenue Station becomes more than a transit hub. It is a space where time and presence seem fluid, where echoes of past commuters and unseen presences coexist with the silent infrastructure of the station. The silent infrastructure of the station. Echoes of past commuters and unseen presences coexist with the silent infrastructure of the station. The combination of phantom footsteps, ghostly voices, and shadowy forms creates an atmosphere that is both unsettling and mesmerizing. Shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, and disembodied voices serve as reminders that the station holds more than steel tracks and concrete walls. Beneath the streets of Brooklyn lies a hidden realm where movement, sound, and presence persist long after the last passenger has departed. In the quiet hours of the night, the station awakens, replaying fragments of the past and offering those who remain after dark a glimpse into a subterranean world that exists alongside the ordinary life above. Chambers Street Station in Manhattan is a major transit hub, serving multiple subway lines and connecting commuters to the bustling heart of downtown. During the day, it is alive with energy. Trains thunder into the station, passengers rush across platforms, announcements echo through the halls, and the rhythmic clatter of footsteps fills every corridor. Vendors and kiosks add to the vibrant atmosphere, while the fluorescent lights illuminate a space constantly in motion. But when the day ends and the last trains leave, Chambers Street transforms. The familiar hum of activity gives way to a quiet, almost oppressive stillness, and for those who remain late at night as security personnel, maintenance workers, and custodial staff of the station becomes a place where the ordinary blends with the inexplicable. Ghostly whispers, phantom footsteps, and spectral figures are frequently reported, particularly near abandoned stairwells and darkened tunnels. One of the most commonly reported phenomena at Chambers Street Station is the sound of footsteps with no discernible source. Employees describe hearing measured, deliberate steps echoing along deserted platforms, stairwells, and corridors. A security guard named Hernandez. He heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing behind him, matching his own rhythm. When he turned, expecting to see a late-night commuter or colleague, the platform was empty. The footsteps continued intermittently before fading into silence, leaving him with the uneasy sensation of being followed by an unseen presence. Many late-night workers describe this sensation as one of the most unnerving aspects of working at Chambers Street, as it implies a conscious presence lingering in the empty station. Ghostly whispers are another frequent occurrence. Late-night staff report hearing faint, indistinct voices drifting through abandoned corridors, tunnels, and stairwells. These voices often seem to respond to movements of those present, moving away when approached, only to reappear moments later in another part of the station. A maintenance worker named Rivera described an experience in which she heard murmured conversations emanating from a disused tunnel. As she cautiously approached, the voices seemed to retreat further into the darkness, leaving the space silent and empty when she reached it. Such auditory phenomena contribute to the sense that Chambers Street is a place where echoes of the past linger, replaying fragments of activity long after the last passenger has departed. Spectral figures add a visual element to the stationized late-night phenomena. Employees often report seeing vague, human-shaped silhouettes near the edges of platforms or moving across abandoned stairwells. One night shift janitor named Patel recalled cleaning the southbound platform when he glimpsed a tall, shadowy figure standing near the stairwell. As he approached, the figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness, leaving only a faint echo of footsteps retreating along the empty platform. Other workers have reported similar sightings in different areas of the station, reinforcing the idea that these apparitions are persistent presence in Chambers Street after hours. Doors opening and closing without explanation are another reported phenomenon. Security personnel have described hearing doors swing open or shut in long-abandoned maintenance areas or closed-off stairwells. One guard, Jackson, recounted a night when he was walking through a side corridor and heard the creak of a door opening behind him. He turned to investigate, but the corridor was empty. Moments later, he heard the soft echo of footsteps moving away. Incidents like this, combined with ghostly whispers and shadowy figures, create an atmosphere where the station itself feels alive, almost as though it is replaying the movements and presence of those who once traversed it. Phantom train sounds are also occasionally reported, though less frequently than footsteps and voices. Workers describe the rumble of trains approaching, the screech of wheels against rails, and the hiss of doors opening and closing, even when no trains are scheduled. A transit inspector, Morales, recalled hearing a deep vibration beneath the floor accompanied by the faint hiss of doors. Expecting a train to emerge in the tunnel, he waited, but none appeared. The sounds gradually faded, leaving only the lingering impression that a train had passed through the station, unseen and unheard by anyone else. These occurrences, combined with footsteps, whispers, and shadowy figures, create a layered experience that is difficult to explain or ignore. The architecture of Chambers Street Station amplifies these experiences. Long corridors, multiple stairwells, and expansive platforms create acoustics that carry footsteps and voices in unpredictable ways. Dim lighting casts shadows that appear to move, while reflective surfaces distort shapes and blur movement. Even experienced employees often struggle to discern whether what they are witnessing is a trick of perception or something truly anomalous. The abandoned tunnels and stairwells provide spaces for figures to appear and vanish, while echoes of sound seem to come from directions that defy logic. Many employees speculate that the phenomena at Chambers Street are linked to the station's long history. Opened decades ago and serving countless commuters and city workers, the station has seen countless footsteps, conversations, and movements. Some believe that the ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, and whispers are residual echoes of those who once traveled through the station. Others suggest that the constant vibration of trains and the presence of humans over decades have left an energetic imprint, manifesting as auditory and visual phenomena when the station becomes quiet. Visitors who remain in the station late at night occasionally share similar experiences. One commuter reported hearing footsteps pacing alongside him on an empty platform, followed by faint whispers emanating from a nearby stairwell. When he turned to look, he glimpsed a shadow crossing the platform before vanishing into darkness. Another witness described hearing the creak of a door opening in a corridor that had been closed for years, accompanied by faint murmurs that seemed to move with him. Such encounters suggest that Chambers Street Station is never truly empty, even when trains have stopped running and passengers have departed. For late-night workers, Chambers Street becomes more than a transit hub. It is a place where the ordinary and the inexplicable intersect. Shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, ghostly whispers, and the occasional phantom train transform empty platforms and abandoned corridors into a hidden world activity that persists long after the last train has left. The station preserves fragments of its history, replaying them silently for anyone present after dark. Even in the quietest hours, Chambers Street Station is never truly deserted. Phantom footsteps, whispers, and spectral figures remind visitors and employees alike that beneath the streets of Manhattan lies a hidden realm. In the darkness, the station awakens, replaying echoes of the past and offering a glimpse into a subterranean world that exists alongside the ordinary life above, where movement, sound, and presence continue long after the city has gone to sleep. Coney Island Shuttle Station in Brooklyn is a small but historically significant transit hub, connecting commuters to the vibrant attractions of Coney Island and the surrounding neighborhoods. Visitors rush to reach the beach, the boardwalk, or local attractions, and the station itself hums with energy. Yet, when the crowds apart and the last trains leave, the shuttle station becomes a different world entirely. The familiar sounds fade, leaving behind an eerie silence that is punctuated only by the occasional drip of water or the hum of the station's ventilation system. It is during these late-night hours that workers and maintenance staff report experiences that are both unsettling and inexplicable. Phantom laughter, footsteps echoing through deserted platforms, and shadowy figures of former passengers moving along the edges of the station. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Coney Island Shuttle Station is phantom footsteps. Employees who work during the late-night hours describe hearing measured, deliberate steps echoing along empty platforms and through narrow corridors. A security guard named Hernandez recalled an evening when he was patrolling the southern end of the platform after the last shuttle had departed. He heard the distinct sound of footsteps pacing behind him, growing louder as he moved forward. When he turned, expecting to see a late commuter or a colleague, the platform was completely empty. The footsteps continued for a few moments, then gradually faded into silence, leaving Hernandez with the unsettling sensation that an unseen presence had been moving in the station alongside him. Similar reports from other staff members suggest that these phantom footsteps are a recurring phenomenon that persists regardless of who is on duty. Phantom laughter is another common experience described by employees. Late-night workers often hear faint, high-pitched giggles echoing through stairwells, tunnels, and deserted platforms. This laughter often seems to shift in location, appearing in one part of the station and then another, as though the source is moving independently. One maintenance worker, Rivera, recounted hearing the laughter while checking the northbound platform late one night. She described it as light and almost playful, but at the same time profoundly disconcerting given the emptiness of the station. Attempts to locate the source invariably prove futile, as the sound seems to vanish or move just out of reach, leaving only the echo lingering in the cavernous space. Shadowy figures are frequently reported at the station, adding a visual dimension to the auditory phenomena. Employees describe seeing vague human-shaped silhouettes along platform edges or moving through abandoned stairwells. One janitor named Patel reported cleaning the southern platform when he noticed a tall, indistinct figure standing near the turnstiles. As he approached, the figure appeared to dissolve into the darkness, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps retreating along the deserted platform. Others have described seeing multiple shadowy figures moving in unison, only to vanish when approached or when the lights flicker, suggesting that the station itself is replaying scenes from its past. Doors creaking and opening by themselves are another element of the station's late-night mystique. Security personnel and maintenance workers report hearing doors swing open or close in corridors and service areas that have been long abandoned. One guard, Jackson, recounted a night when he heard a door creak behind him while inspecting a stairwell leading to a disused platform. He turned to investigate, but the area was empty. Moments later, he heard the faint echo of footsteps moving away, leaving him with the feeling that the station was somehow alive, replaying activity from its past. These experiences, combined with phantom laughter, footsteps, and shadowy figures, create an atmosphere in which the ordinary rules of reality seem suspended. The architecture of Coney Island Shuttle Station amplifies these phenomena. Long, narrow corridors, low lighting, and multi-level platforms carry sound in unusual ways, making echoes appear closer or farther than they really are. Dim lighting casts shadows that appear to shift and move, and reflective surfaces create illusions of figures moving along the edges of platform. Abandoned stairwells and service rooms provide spaces for apparitions to appear and vanish, while the acoustics make even the faintest sound resonate, giving the impression that the station is far more populated than it actually is. Many employees speculate that the hauntings at Coney Island Shuttle Station are connected to its history. The station has been a transit hub for decades, seeing countless passengers traveling to and from the boardwalk, beach, and amusement areas. Some believe that the phantom figures, laughter, and footsteps are residual echoes of people who once passed through the station. Others suggest that the vibrations of constant train movement, the sound of footsteps, and the chatter of daily commuters have left an imprint on the structure itself, manifesting in ways that are perceptible only when the station is quiet and empty. Late-night visitors and urban explorers sometimes encounter similar experiences. One commuter waiting for a delayed shuttle reported hearing footsteps pacing alongside him on the deserted platform, followed by faint, playful laughter coming from a nearby tunnel. When he looked toward the source, he saw a shadowy figure move along the edge of the platform and disappear into darkness. Another visitor described hearing a door creak open in an abandoned stairwell, accompanied by the soft echo of footsteps moving away. These encounters reinforce the idea that the station, though deserted, is a space where past and present coexist in strange and sometimes unsettling ways. The combination of phantom laughter, shadowy figures, and footsteps transforms the station from a simple transit hub into a space where time and presence seem fluid. For employees working late shifts, Coney Island Shuttle Station becomes a hidden world, a subterranean realm in which ordinary life intersects with echoes of the past. The empty platforms and deserted corridors become a theater for unseen activity, replaying moments that occurred long ago for those present after dark. Even when the last shuttle has departed and the platforms are empty, Coney Island Shuttle Station is never truly vacant. Phantom footsteps, laughter, and shadowy figures serve as a reminder that beneath Brooklyn-esque streets lies a hidden realm of motion and sound. In the quiet hours of night, the station awakens, replaying fragments of its history, and offering those who remain a glimpse into a subterranean world. South Ferry Station in Manhattan is one of New York City's most historically significant subway terminals, serving as a gateway to Lower Manhattan and the Staten Island Ferry. During the day, it is a hub of activity. Trains pull into the station, passengers hurry to catch connections, and the familiar announcements echo through platforms and corridors. The tiled walls glint under bright fluorescent lights, and the rhythmic clatter of footsteps combines with the mechanical hum of trains to create the unmistakable pulse of a busy transit hub. Yet when the day ends and trains no longer arrive, portions of South Ferry Station become eerily silent, particularly in areas that are closed off or partially decommissioned. It is in these spaces that employees, maintenance staff, and security personnel report phenomena that are as unsettling as they are inexplicable. Ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, doors that swing open on their own, and the distant wail of train horns where no trains run. Among the most frequently reported experiences are sightings of ghostly figures. Employees working late-night shifts have described vague silhouettes appearing in deserted corridors and on abandoned platforms. One security guard, Hernandez, recounted an evening when he was patrolling a section of the station that had been partially decommissioned. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a dark figure moving along the platform. When he turned to face it, the shape vanished into the shadows. Moments later, he heard the echo of footsteps retreating down a narrow tunnel. Others report seeing figures standing at the edges of platforms, disappearing as they approach, suggesting that the station is haunted by echoes of former passengers who once filled the space. Phantom footsteps are another common phenomenon. Workers describe hearing measured steps along empty platforms and through abandoned hallways, often synchronized with no visible source. A maintenance worker named Patel described an experience while inspecting a disused stairwell. He heard slow, deliberate steps echoing behind him. When he turned, no one was there. The footsteps continued for several moments before fading, leaving Patel with the unsettling impression of being followed by an unseen presence. This phenomenon is reported repeatedly across different areas of the station, making late-night shifts a source of heightened tension and awareness. Doors opening and closing seemingly on their own add to the station's eerie reputation. Late-night employees describe hearing creaks and thuds from hallways or corridors that are officially closed, sometimes followed by the echo of footsteps moving away. One janitor, Rivera, recalled walking through a partially decommissioned passage when she heard the unmistakable sound of a heavy metal door opening behind her. She spun around, flashlight raised, but the corridor was empty. Moments later, the distant echo of retreating footsteps suggested that some thinga or summonia had moved through the space unseen. These auditory anomalies often occur alongside sightings of shadowy figures, making the station feel alive even when completely deserted. Distant train horns are also reported, particularly in areas where no trains operate. Security personnel and maintenance staff have described hearing the deep, resonant blast of a horn echoing through tunnels and platforms late at night. A guard named Morales recounted one night when he was stationed near a closed platform and heard the unmistakable sound of a horn, followed by the vibration of tracks beneath his feet. Expecting a train to appear, he waited, but the tunnel remained empty. The sounds faded slowly, leaving an eerie impression that the station was replaying the presence of trains long gone, as though it were caught in a loop of memory and sound. Long corridors, stairwells, and multiple platforms create acoustics that carry footsteps, doors, and distant noises in unusual ways, making sounds appear closer or farther than they are. Dim lighting casts shadows that seem to move independently, while reflective surfaces distort shapes, turning ordinary movements into fleeting apparitions. Abandoned areas provide spaces where ghostly figures can appear and vanish, while the echoes of steps, horns, and doors enhance the perception of activity in a space that is technically empty. Many employees speculate that the station's haunted reputation is linked to its history. South Ferry has been in operation for decades, witnessing the passage of countless commuters, workers, and visitors. Some believe that the ghostly figures, footsteps, doors, and train sounds are residual impressions left by those who once traveled through the station. Others suggest that the constant vibration of trains and the continual presence of humans over decades have imprinted energy onto the structure itself, producing phenomena that are perceptible only when the station is quiet and empty. Occasionally, visitors and urban explorers who gain access to closed areas report similar experiences. One explorer described hearing footsteps pacing alongside him through a deserted platform, followed by the creak of a door opening in a nearby corridor. When he turned toward the sound, a shadowy figure moved across the edge of the platform and disappeared. Another visitor recounted hearing a train horn echoing through a decommissioned tunnel, accompanied by the distant hum of an empty station that seemed to carry the memories of its past passengers. For those who work late shifts, the station becomes more than a transit hub. Ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, doors swinging on their own, and distant train horns transform empty platforms and closed corridors into a space where the ordinary intersects with the extraordinary. The station seems to replay fragments of its past, offering those present after dark a glimpse into moments and movements long gone. Even when trains have stopped running and public access is restricted, South Ferry Station is never completely deserted. Phantom footsteps, ghostly figures, doors that move without explanation, and distant horns serve as reminders that beneath Manhattan's streets lies a hidden realm. In the stillness of night, the station awakens, replaying echoes of the past and creating a subterranean world where presence, movement, and sound continue long after the city above has gone to sleep. UAV wandered through shadowed platforms, deserted corridors, and echoing tunnels. UAV heard footsteps when no one was there, phantom voices calling out, and trains that seemed to appear from nowhere. New York as haunted